Welcome to the Devil's Workshop.
Thank you. Good to be here.
How do you pronounce your name, Archit?
Let's get started with that. Archit.
Archit.
So, I mean, I guess at this point, even when I say it myself, I anglicize it a bit, but the way I would pronounce it is Archit.
Archit. All right.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the podcast. It was
Cheers.
named after you, so it was your idea to
right.
to bring it up. So yeah.
I'm cool.
You are episode 1 apparently.
As it would turn out. I mean, I guess technically not, but for all
Technically doesn't.
for all understandable podcast purposes, this is
Who cares? It's who cares? Who cares about technicality?
That's true.
This extent. Let me take this out of the way.
All right.
What's up? How have you been?
Been good. It's like work. Most of the day is taken up by the way the work goes in our occupation. It's when you ask me what's up, it's usually going to be something related to work. But work is good. We have some good results and stuff.
Okay.
Other than that, the bike is new, so now it's a bit of
You have a vehicle now.
to inject a bit of adventure in the.
How does it feel to actually, go out and do something physically demanding?
Oh, it's nice. It's like it's funny because the phrase people generally use is it's like riding a bike. You don't forget it. And
No,
that's
but-
kind of what it is like to do physical activities now. It's like, it's like riding a bike. You don't really forget it, but it is taxing.
Well, it is.
It'll get a bit of getting used to again because now
Yeah,
it's been a while since I rode a bike.
It's like language, you're not gonna forget your mother tongue, but you're
Yeah.
gonna forget a lot of vocabulary. So
Yeah,
it's,
so I haven't forgotten it like riding the bike, but
Mm-hmm.
I will have to get it will have to get used to it a bit, which is the point, I guess, to get back in the shape.
sure. Well, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, and more so like I don't know, it was getting kind of too routine at this point. Take the tram every morning, and then you come back every day at 7. You don't really. I don't know. I need a bit of change of pace.
Well, you have gotten that with the bike, that's for
Yeah,
sure. And
change of scenery and change of pace, like quite literally.
so how long has it
that's
been that you're in Strasbourg?
It's been a year and a month exactly.
A year and a month. Well,
Today is what, 28th?
yeah.
It's a year, a month, and 2 days.
Wow. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And you haven't been home since.
I haven't been home yet. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Which is actually not that strange for me because the
think
last. Yeah,
I think you prepared for it. That's
I did.
we talked about it. So
Yeah. No, I used to be infamous back in college, which was like 2008 when I joined college. I used to be infamous for going home every weekend because home was at that point home was 1 hour away. So, so it was like, oh, Archit, of course he's home already. It's Friday evening, of course he's home already. Because I used to stay in the hostel and I'd go home every opportunity I'd get. But over time, even though I was still in the same place for the next 5 years, by the end of 3rd year, I was like, maybe in a couple of months or so, once in a couple of months when I find time.
it still boggles my mind to what extent, because I know a couple of people, me included, leaving everything, thousands of kilometers behind. But
Yeah.
you are by far the person who has came the longest way so far.
That you know of.
That I have met, yeah.
Yeah.
No, there are people who traveled more than you.
Yeah.
There are more people than are also dead than living. So,
That's
yeah,
true.
and we can
That's
come
true.
up with a lot of other.
That's true. No, I mean, so in my mind, it used to be like 2 things. One is, it's like you feel like going home all the time because you relate to it the most, and you're like, okay, this is my comfort place, or this is where I care what's happening at this point. So that's in my mind. I'm not saying this is true for everyone. That's why I used to go home quite often initially. And then eventually your idea of that place changes. Like, oh, now this is my home because I feel like this place is what I care about the most, or this place is where I want to be or relate to the most. Like, for example, when people say, oh, this is my new home, even though it really isn't the place they grew up in, what they mean is that this is the point where they care about. Which was true for me at my last job, which was still in India, but like several 100 miles away, kilometers away, and and over there it was like, yeah, I had found like a new home almost, where I had things to really care about and pay attention to, so I couldn't really make time to go back to my where I grew up. Over here, yeah, sure, this is a nice place and I'm getting used to it, but I still don't feel like this place is my home. It's not that place. It's just that I don't have the choice to go back to home anytime that I feel like, oh, I want to know what's happening to the place that I care about. I can't really. I don't have that luxury over here.
Well, not yet, but it's gonna come when it has to. So
yeah, I mean, but also this place is becoming more more relatable to me, in the sense that I can probably see this becoming homely.
You think you would stay after your contract ends?
Yeah, I might stay for a little bit. I don't know, but it's been true for me throughout my career trajectory that I moved at the end of every job I have moved places. So, and this is my fifth stint. That
I thought that living like gypsies on the road, that's appropriate to musicians and
I'm
artists.
a gypsy.
Well, it is kind of there, no? I mean, with the good parts of it. I mean, you're a gypsy in the sense of personal space or whatever you can bring with yourself, nothing else but just that.
That's true. You'd be surprised how many times I have had the realization that at this point it's not even an epiphany, is that all the things you care about could be packed in like a suitcase and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
So,
I know.
So at this point, I'm like, yeah, that's just the way it is. You can say all you want that, oh, this is my home and this is where I belong, but at the end of the day, when you really want to catch that expensive flight to a faraway place, you're gonna pack everything in a suitcase and a half.
And it's gonna work out. I know. It was a shocking experiment to me when in 2010 we came here. We came from Budapest, and we went to my grandmother's because she provided 3 weeks. She provided like a room half this size for me and my ex-girlfriend that I came here with, and 3 weeks later, when time was up, and I had an apartment in Strasbourg, so my grandmother is living down south. Everything, we were able to pack everything into her Peugeot 206. Yeah, it's a small car.
Wow.
Everything.
Yeah.
And my grandmother and me inside, and my ex had to come and bring another backpack with the train. And that was it. And it was a bit of a shocking thing.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that we were audacious. I think we were crazy to do it the way we did. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody, because at one point money ran out, and that was kind of a problem. And I remember distinctively in September I have my name day in Hungary, and my grandparents sent some money just as a present for this name day, which we never really celebrate. It's stupid, and that was the one thing that saved us from starvation, which was a stupid thing. But otherwise, I mean, I'm glad it happened, but it was just it's crazy. So
it sounds like when you did move finally, it may not have been as thoroughly planned as some people generally plan. So was it like,
I don't think you can actually plan these. I mean, we tried as much as it was possible, but we moved to a country where we didn't speak the language. We didn't know anybody. We didn't have work. We didn't know where we are going. The place where we were going for the first time wasn't the city we wanted to live in. And yeah, that was. I would say you have to be borderline crazy to do something like that. That was very stupid with so little money. I wouldn't want to turn back time and not having it happened. But 500 euros more, that would have helped. Having that said, that was insane amount of money to me in Hungary. So it was just
exactly
borderline impossible. Yeah, I sold everything I had, and I sold one bass that I actually regret to this day. It was a 86 white Ibanez with Japanese version, which was made the same year I was born. That was the only instrument this old that I owned. It was very comfortable. I gave it away for like a ridiculous price.
But it was probably really important to get the cash from it than to...
Yeah, well, we had to pay rent. And
exactly.
we had to pay the
value of things change.
Sure, no, I don't regret it, but it's a shame. I would have loved to keep that one, but I managed to keep the first one, for example, and I managed to keep the 5-string that's in a so yeah, I managed to keep a couple of things. It was fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not crying about it, but that one instrument I wish I could find the guy who bought it. I would
yeah,
pay double price.
I was going to
right
suggest
now.
exactly at this point.
I did the research.
You probably could try.
No way. It's well, maybe another piece of something similar. I don't know. Have you ever felt like this with instruments or anything?
Come on, I mean, with instruments.
Well, with anything else then, because it's not been that long that you
Exactly.
Music, so.
The first ever instrument I bought was like 8 months ago. So, but I am deeply attached to that one.
Oh, I know.
But
you practice it on all the time. It's
yeah, exactly, all
impressive.
the time. I am like when one of the strings broke, I was like. But I wouldn't be able to say that I'm that attached to it yet. But if it comes to objects, yes, sure, of course. I guess the first thing that I got attached to, I remember heavily, was this diary in which I used to draw like my theories about. This was in 8th grade, by the way, so I was a child. So don't make fun of a child, you. And
you don't think I did the same?
I used to scribble like DNA at the back of the cover and be like, oh, so this is how it works, and oh, this is what they say. This is the theory behind how molecular biology works, and that makes so much sense. And I would write down notes for ideas about how fiction can be arranged around these scientific ideas. I was always into that kind of stuff, so it was just a bit of sketches, if you may, of that nature. And that diary was like, I kept it with me for as long as I could through college, but I was not very good at keeping it safe. I kept it, by which I mean it was in my vicinity, but that I didn't take care of it as much, so it was all worn out by the end of it. At some point I started losing pages and stuff, so then I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave this home, not taking this to France with me because I will not keep it well. And my mom, who's a professional at keeping things properly, I left it in her care, and it's at home now. But it has a lot of scribblings and a lot of plot points. Like, you know, when we make experiments, we do a flow chart, like step 1, step 2, arrow marks, and then arrow marks and arrow marks. I made plot points like that for like stories that I would build around scientific ideas or discoveries that I read about. I would be like, oh, then this happened, then this evil scientist comes along, and this happens, shit like that. And this was 8-year-old me, yeah. So some of them were cringy as fuck, but entertaining nevertheless.
You have to start somewhere.
Exactly.
You are fascinated by this whole universe of being a scientist.
Yeah, I really was. It was crazy.
I think you still are, actually.
No, I wouldn't say I was, but the reason I say I was is because now I feel like I'm part of the scientific part of it more than the fiction part of it. But when I wasn't part of the scientific, I was just like there's so much here that you can.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Yeah, it's.
So yeah, I was quite gravitated towards that early on.
When did it start, do you think?
Oh, it's a very definite moment. It was we went to watch the movie Lion King.
Yeah.
And we wanted to watch The Lion King, but at the same time, or around the same time, X-Men also came out. One of the X-Men, I think it was the second one or something.
I've never seen those.
Yeah.
They look horrible to me, so...
Yeah. They were not the best movies at all. They haven't aged well either. No. But they had the concept of this genetics and stuff like that. So we watched the movie, and I came out of the movie. It was just me and my dad. My dad used to love to take me to show the real city, Bombay, and like so India is always at odds with each other. There's one part of India which is developing at this breakneck pace. And the other part of India, which is where we were from, it's like you don't really see change in the small towns.
Okay.
So my dad used to love to show me the part that is moving, and he would take me to these fancy multiplexes. Back then, multiplexes were like this new thing. So we went to a multiplex to watch X-Men, one of the X-Men movies, and I came out. And thing about the multiplex is that you would have multiple stores. So one of the stores was a bookstore. So because I had just seen X-Men, the book that I got my attention and I picked it up was called Double Helix by James Watson, who is the discoverer of the structure of DNA. So I was like, I want to read that book. I had no idea what it meant at that time. I was like, I want to read that book because it looked like the cover page was the DNA symbol and everything. And I was like, we just saw a movie and this looks like something I'm interested in at this point. So I picked up that, and that book, that was the start.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
That early.
Yeah, this was like, what, 2003, end of 2003, so 8th grade for me.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. We're not that far apart age-wise then. I started high school in 2001, so...
Yeah, I think I just like 3 or 2 years, something.
Yeah, something like that.
Pardon me. And then...
it's mind-blowing to me.
From then on, I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is what I want to get in. And you can imagine this was a time when I was still struggling with the English language as a whole. Like, I was not nearly as good at it as I am now. Reading comprehension or even speaking was a whole different ball game altogether. But when I picked up that book, I was not able to understand all of it. And this is written by an American who worked in Cambridge and came up with one of the most important discovery of the last century in the most elaborate language that he could think of to make sure that it is not just rich as a piece of literature, but also scientifically consistent. You can imagine how much of it I understood.
Well,
but the parts that I did, I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. I skipped many chapters the first read, but I have read it like, I don't know, 15 or 20 times over by now. So
oh my God.
it's like it's okay now.
I wish I had this change in my childhood when I knew what I wanted to do, but there's just nothing. It's like nothing. It's a cluelessness all the way.
But given that you just said that you were attached to an instrument, must mean that at some point you must have...
That was at 17.
But at some point you must have realized that
sure,
musical instruments are what you were attached to the most.
I don't think it was me. First of all, I was when I was 7. They didn't bring me to the school which I would have to go, designated by the district. My mother, for whatever reason, has chosen to bring me to this other school, which was named after Liszt Ferenc. And so it was a music school, so that's pretty much it. And I actually follow some of the elementary school, I don't know, classmates that I had, friends. A fairly big number was or is involved in music. Not on the same level as I am, not everybody. I wouldn't say my level is that high, but well, I did a couple of things, and yeah. It's more. I think it's more like that, and also the fact that we talked about this with Arthur last time, because I asked him how did he figure out that he wants to be a musician, and why is he so adamant on doing that? And he said, well, I wanted to tell him, I wanted to prove him this hypothesis that I had last time. That's what you taught me. Yeah, the theories and hypotheses
right.
isn't the same thing. They aren't the same thing. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
man.
so I had
awesome.
I had this hypothesis that it's because you are exposed to music at a certain age, preferably before you're 9 months old, pretty much. So yeah, that's what happened. I think we were all exposed, and it was just a natural way of developing for me. I mean, when I was 7, they made us choose an instrument, and I chose the violin. I had no idea why. I still don't. I have videos of me playing it very shittily, but I think it helped. And when I look at my hands, for example, now playing the bass, some of the times I resort to the same kind of same kind of wrist position that you would have with the violin, which is absolutely unnatural for anything that requires a force like a bass.
Yeah, because
but it is something that comes very natural because of that. Otherwise, I know that I was very I was an asshole to the teacher even at the age of 7. My mother was very embarrassed with me the way I talked to the teacher. I don't think she deserved it. But in retrospect, this is one of the reasons why I criticize so harshly the classical education in Hungary and in Europe in general. So I think she was a part of it. So.
Well, education systems everywhere have their own different set of problems. It's like, even back in school, I was not even remotely the brightest kid in class. In fact, if I remember well, 7th grade, I failed 1 or 2 subjects, and I was promoted the next grade because it was like, yeah, you failed, but only by like a few points, so we'll give you these extra points so that you can go to the next year. We don't want you to sit around for another year here, so we'll just push you through.
Want to hear something crazy? I in my 2nd year of high school, I failed 12 subjects. Wow. There was 13 subjects I failed. I didn't fail 1 because I don't think I attended it. Yeah, I really didn't want to go.
I wanted to pass, which is why it is sad that I failed. And I tried, and I would try to pay attention and study, but I was so bad at just memorizing stuff because you're supposed to, that I would never, as hard as I try, I would never be able to reproduce what I read yesterday because I was just not into it. I mean, maybe that's not true, huh? Maybe I was just poor at that subject, but this is how I rationalize it, is that I wasn't interested in it. And I can remember not being interested in it.
Have you ever thought about this? How does it happen that you are interested in something? How does it come to being?
Kind of complex. And again, I have not really thought about it too much, so it will be.
Do you think is it something that you can influence?
What you get interested in? Yes, I think it can be influenced. I think the mind is not totally immune to external influences like this, but it'll have to be something very subconscious. Like, you can't be consciously influenced. It can't be consciously influenced. You have to be like, you're not paying attention consciously, but because you see it over and over, or you hear it over and over, eventually you do get drawn to it. That's very likely, because that is how most forms of hypnosis and these kind of things work. So I know that's possible. I don't know whether that can be used to just inspire someone to be interested in something. I don't know. Maybe. I haven't really thought about it too much, so I don't know how to articulate it. It's because of our common friend that this question popped into my head like 2.5 years ago. It's like, how do you get somebody interested in something that they are not necessarily interested in? And I figured out that, first of all, it's practically impossible. Like, on a conscious level, it's impossible. You can show traces of it and what is interesting about it, and especially because I wanted to show how creativity in music is like a outlet for a part of creativity that maybe you guys don't get to enjoy as much as we do. I try to direct this person's attention to that part, but it wasn't working, and I didn't really understand, and that's I've been thinking ever since. It's like, how the hell does that get influenced? I mean, especially because people sometimes ask me the question, how do you find your passion? How do you know what you will have to do for your entire life? Well, the thing is, with what I decided, I told you just now how I got drawn, like stuck to it, maybe.
Well, yeah, but you were too little to understand where it comes from. I mean, it sounds like genuine inspiration.
Yeah, like I just got drawn to it and I stuck with it. But
I'm not, well,
there's
yeah,
still,
it's a bit pejorative to say it like that. I mean, I don't think you're stuck with it, but it is.
yeah, no, I mean, so far, I don't know about the future. But I think there were multiple reasons. Like the way I think about it when I in retrospect, when I think about it and I try to say why biology is the one that I got drawn to the most. It couldn't have possibly been just one movie for sure, but I can think of multiple reasons. Like, oh yeah, my father was going through some health crisis, and I got interested in aspects of that. At the same time, I was reading these books that were a lot of biological trivia. I was reading, so maybe all of that together got me drawn to it. But why I decided that this will be the career path, I don't really know. Like it's
that's not really. I don't think that matters that much. I mean, how you stumbled upon it is what I'm really after. Because the thing is, my grandfather. I told this to Arthur, so I told this story many times to many people. He became one of the biggest French-Hungarian translators after he went back to Hungary, and at one point we were talking about career choices, and he was like, "Do you think that when I was like 18 or 20, I knew that this is going to happen? I had no idea. I had no idea, and you should accept the fact that you will not know what you're gonna be in your 50s, for example. It's just,
that's true.
He has just no idea. So I don't think you do either. But it's kind of a mind-boggling thing to me is what gets us interested. How to find the stuff? How to find more stuff that you find interesting, or could we develop like some kind of a behavioral pattern, or something that you could practically, that you could turn into practice, that you could do in order to find more stuff that you are interested in? Or where does it get lost? This is something that I've been thinking about for months. Well,
that in itself is extremely interesting question. But maybe as a supplement or a corollary, I'd like to add: do you really want to?
Oh yeah,
have a method or in practice a way to get interested in something? Because
why wouldn't you? I mean,
because well, as a scientist, that'd be cool, sure. But as someone who has to concede that human behavior and consciousness is many times just a flip of a coin, these things could be just happening quite randomly, and you try really hard to make it into a system. It may work, very likely it won't, but if it does work, it might affect the kind of diversity we have in thought. You don't want a system to this. You want a bit of randomness, wouldn't you think? Like a bit of like, you don't know what you'd be interested to, and there's no way to tell whether you'll be interested in this thing.
No, okay.
That.
How about what would you say to those who seemingly are interested in nothing, and they ask you, how do you get to the point where you find out something that you're so interested in that you're willing to suck at it at the beginning and push through that whole period? Now that's my question, rather, because those people, who have, once you're happy, once you have found what you want to do, you don't give a shit anymore. It's you're not looking, because that's not the journey. But I know so many people, and I have been on this path that started like 4 years ago up until the end of last year, that I had zero idea what to do. I mean, I had tracks, but it was just not inspiring. It was just not passionate whatsoever. And yeah, I think it would be useful, because here's what happens. There's not a single thing that's genuinely bad that I can think of as an outcome of finding out what you actually want to do with your life, right?
Yes, that's true. But what do you imagine that would look like? Like an allergy test, for example?
No, not like that.
It's
just
and
like
one of them sticks.
It's just like think about the stuff that you liked doing as a kid. because I think the issue with this is kids losing their curiosity.
That's true, largely.
Yeah, and as far as I can tell, although I would have to finish some university to actually say this out loud with conviction, but as far as I can tell, this is more about a social impact on you. Namely, your parents are restricting you so much that you lose the ability to be curious because it's overwhelmed by some sense of or a worry of failure or something like this.
This I've observed.
Yeah, I see this all the time. And so when I'm saying that you like a methodology that would help you to get back on track, I'm thinking about something like this. It's like nothing that, you know, profound or something that could be harmful. It's just how to get back to the point where you had this thing, even when it was in its infancy.
I mean, usually the biggest enemy of curiosity is the feeling that you have it figured out. That's usually what kills curiosity. I mean, when parents do that to their children, it's not because...
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, it's not because kids
okay.
don't... it's not... We don't forget curiosity. It's just that we are told, this is what will get you to this... Okay. I mean, I will stray off the point a bit. But the most efficient technique so far in history to get someone to commit crimes or to get someone else to do something for you has been the enticement that this place is where you will be happy. You have everything figured out and you will need nothing else. Or if I convince you that this is what you need in your life, this is what you need to get to, then that's the track you will follow regardless. It's not that curiosity is dead, it's just that, well, if I know that's where I want to go, then why should I bother about the other things that may or may not lead to something happy or something secure or something nice? I think that is the biggest enemy of curiosity. And the reason many kids and many of my friends in retrospect have fallen into this trap is because their parents or sometimes their teachers or sometimes they themselves convince themselves that this is the way to be secure or be happy or get that one thing that they've been told is valuable. Once that happens, it's like, yeah, maybe I'm interested in music or photography or sketching or whatever, but it seems like engineering is the way to get to it. So I'm going to stick to it. I feel like that is probably the main reason why we lose curiosity, or the factor that lets us take the risk to try and fail at something, like you said. I think that's where we lose it. It's like we get convinced that that's fine and all, like those risks and all, but here's this thing that will definitely lead you to some form of valuable thing in your life. And in India, for example, this is largely true that careers are not thought of as something you get pleasure out of. No, not at all. Careers are something that you get security out of, or in the terms of money or status or whatever. Career is never, no, I shouldn't say never, it's changing, but largely in majority of the households, you will not learn that, oh, do what you like to do. No, you're told do what's the most secure or the safest path. That kills curiosity quite easily, very easily, I think.
Well, yeah, but I think it partially comes from the fact that it is economically poorer. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that it's not justified at all.
No, I do understand you. It's just
but it's counterproductive.
In a way, certainly, sure.
Yeah.
Well, you know.
No, it's definitely, in my opinion, it's definitely counterproductive. See, you can only get so far by being a labor force on the global economy. You can only get so far. At some point, you have to be a country of innovation. And again, I use the country as an example, but this is true for every group of people or communities or species. You have to be innovative. You can't just
so many questions.
You can't be laborious only. So yes, you can think of it as, yeah, this, if I follow this track, which will pave way to economical success and some form of contribution to the society, that's all good and all, but you do need, it's essential that people try and fail things in your community, and they should. It will never be a majority of people by the law of large numbers, but it will still be a significant portion. It should still be a significant portion of the community. Otherwise, you're gonna come to a standstill. You need that those number of risk takers, I think.
You think you are one of these risk takers yourself?
Not far out enough.
What does that mean?
I don't think I'm far out. I am taking maybe slightly a larger risk than most of my classmates from back in high school, for sure.
Because
this is not a career path that many would choose. This is not a career path.
I don't think it's an easy one. So
definitely not an easy one. But relatively speaking, like, compared to artists, for example, there's still much more. It's still more grounded. But
Thank
the
God.
future is fairly unclear in my profession as well. So I would say there is a bit of risk, but it's not far enough out there. By that, what I mean is, at the end of my tenure here, keep it limited to that, I will come up with something innovative which will contribute to society in general and stuff like that. But I'm not taking a large risk when I'm doing that. I'm taking a minor risk, which is that I don't know if I'll get the next job, or how well it'll pay, or whether it will be.
Wouldn't you consider leaving your home and everything you know for thousands of miles to come to a country where you don't speak the language? A risk?
That's true, but that's risk in the retrospect. Risk in the future would
But it doesn't make it less.
No, it doesn't make it less. Doesn't make it less. No.
Just because you master it already, it is one of the reasons why most of your classmates didn't do it, because it's horribly risky. I think so. I mean,
no, you're right.
How many corners could you have failed at? Almost every step of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Every step of the way, pretty much, because it's not something the majority does or succeeds at.
How could
it's
they?
Not.
It's complicated. It requires a skill set that's I think it's very unique. And not only your field, but also the fact that you leave everything that you know behind, in trusting in something that in trusting. I mean, if there's an ultimate sacrifice, it's pretty much that. It's beyond that is like you're sacrificing your life, and that would be the only thing that would be more severe than this, in my opinion. It's like. How much can you believe that the future holds something good in you for you to sacrifice not just your today, but also maybe your closer tomorrow? You guys sacrifice 4, 5, 10 years maybe to come up with something that our civilization could use, maybe.
Yeah.
That's
well, the best of us do, but that being
you
said,
will arrive at results, nevertheless. That's for sure.
But that being said, this is the thing. When you articulate it that way, and you did pretty well, I can see what you mean by that. But because I in the last 5 years of my life, I was surrounded by people who want similar things as me, and are quite like me in their aspirations and all. It's been normalized to an extent where I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's just how it is, I guess. But if I look back 5 more years into my past, I start realizing, yeah, 10 years ago, people were not like that around me. People around me were quite scared of this kind of a career. It's not even like a real career, thought of as a real career back home. People were, so when you say that, I immediately started remembering the way it would have been thought of as 10 years ago. But 5 years ago, when I was already doing science research, I was surrounded by people who thought the way that I do. So then it got kind of normalized for me. And at this point, I feel like this is the way it is. Like, I don't feel like I'm that much of an outlier anymore, which is great in one way, because I feel like this is the creed that I belong to.
But I also think it's a bit of a narrow perspective of things, because you people don't have the time to socialize outside your circles. It's very rare.
It's difficult.
It's complicated. Not only those people are hardly reachable for you, that have a different mindset, and you guys have a mindset that has to be out in the spectrum in order for it to work. Also, I find it that because of the high level of your education, it is pretty easy to go with the narrative that everybody else is boring, and I pretty much understand that. I mean, I'm not saying it is the case, and I'm saying it when you say that it's because you're not paying attention enough to other people in front of you. But it is hard when your genuine task is that when you're doing your best, you have to get rid of everything that in thinking makes you human. I mean,
well, I don't know. I feel I do want to comment on a fair amount of things that you said, but I don't want to. It feels like it's a pedestal that I'm on, which is that because
rightfully so. I mean,
no, I don't want to be on.
Nobody I know.
I don't want to be on that pedestal.
Well, you shouldn't be. No, you have to be humble about it, because there's no other way of progressing. But it is. I think it's a healthy way to realize. It's a healthy thing to realize when you are in the top 5% of everybody you have ever known, because of this particular education and because of this particular field that you're working on. I mean, that's not very harmful. You just have to be able to put it into perspective. That the lack of that doesn't mean that that everybody else worth less. It's just in lights of this particular biological field, these people who know nothing and can contribute nothing to it are probably less interesting in a work context, but otherwise,
Yeah. So I guess I'll get to the responding to several parts of it.
Okay.
First off, you're right. It will sound like I'm being
wine. Would you like
sure?
Some?
Yeah. Let's get to the wine part of it.
You want another glass, maybe?
Oh yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
All right. Give me a sec.
Yeah. That's fine. Do you have a place where I can plug in my phone for charging?
Sure. Actually,
it's keeping
right in front of you.
Okay.
What kind of
a USB would be best.
Find you something. You want to have it beside you?
No, it doesn't matter. No, not at all. I'm not going to pay attention to it, but when I leave, I don't want it dead. That's all.
All right.
Yeah. I haven't forgotten the point.
No, I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oops.
You find it comfortable?
Yeah, they're comfortable. Yeah, they really are, because they don't press on your ears much, which is really
horrifying.
Yeah,
I hate those.
I guess
Arthur has given them to me, but it just doesn't work for me.
I guess for me it fits around just perfectly, so it's good for me.
Zero amount of headphones I've ever tried in my life work for me.
Yeah, oh, that's terrible. As
someone
who works with music for his most of the rest of his life, it's pretty terrible.
I have very big ears, yeah, inside and outside. Really, it's no earplugs work for me. It falls out of my ear. The iPhone headset that they give with the phone falls out of my ear.
I actually love the earplugs that
They sound great for me also when I push them in, but otherwise it falls out of my ear because well, sorry about that.
Yeah. Anyway, so what I was going to say is, first off, you're right about the point about humility, is that
you have to have it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, we do. We can't let that get to our head, because otherwise judgments get clouded pretty quickly.
That's a good point. I didn't even think of that.
Pretty quickly. This has happened several times in history, and
oh my god,
stay away from that shit, guys. Scientists out there, stay away from that shit. But second of all, when you have, if you think about it, at this point, I only have a master's degree. Which, no, if you think about it, and this is true. I only have a master's degree, which I would think majority of people who can afford an education do. So it's not unique, the degree that I have, academically speaking. But in the circles that I've been in since my higher education started, has been a circle of elites, in the sense that these are people who, I mean, the people I've spoken to and shaken hands with and have had dinner discussions with are people who came up with stuff that got them the Nobel Prize, and stuff that got them the, made them the editor of some of the most reputed journals in.
They are shittier crowds, I can tell you that.
So when you're in these circles and you're doing your masters, you can't help but be humbled, in the sense that even if I finish my PhD, which I will, and I do a postdoc, which I will, and I do research for 10 more years, which I hope I will get to, it will still be a sense of, damn, remember that time you met John Gurdon? He established the Gurdon Institute and he got the Nobel Prize, and he still worked at the age of 90 himself, sitting at the microscope. You will still be thinking that. I know I will be. I will still be thinking that, in the sense that, come on, I can't tell myself that I'm as good as that. No. That was the crowd that I've been with, circle that I've been with. So in your field who are the top dogs.
Oh yeah, well, it's pretty much the same with music.
Yeah, and I've been lucky enough. There's many people who do masters in biotechnology or masters in biochemistry or biology or stuff like that. Quite a few, but they don't really do it with the same intentions that I did, which is to do fundamental research and actually keep doing research for the rest of their life. They do it with the intention, I want a master's degree.
Yeah, well, that's not going to bring you the same kind of results,
no,
for sure.
No, these people don't end up doing research for that. They just want a master's degree, and no judgment, whatever you want, man, whatever floats your boat. But when you do it with the intention of doing research, you're lucky enough to try to get into the premier institutes where these elite circles are. So I was lucky enough to be in places, even in India, where I would meet the kind of crowd that will always keep me humble.
Okay.
So I have kind of gotten normalized in the past only like a couple of years, that I'm like, okay, I know who are the top people and I know where they are, and I will try my best to get to that, or at least work with them, which is the best I can hope for. Everything else, we'll see how it goes.
Well, sure.
But when you're removed from that crowd, and being the lower middle class Indian boy that I am, most of my friends are not in these circles. They are from completely unrelated circles, or from completely unrelated forget academic backgrounds, even just in general normal walks of life. The way you think, the way that you just observe things, it's completely different. And I have never felt, sure, some friends I left behind for those exact reasons, is that their thinking is far too out of reach for me. I can't go down. I think of it as going down. I can't go down to that level at this point in my life. But some friends can still be interesting to me, because they bring what I appreciate a lot, is diversity of thought.
Well, yeah, I think that's the reason why we are so obsessed with communication in the first place.
I can't get enough of it, in the sense that you can be... I make a separation in this, and we had this discussion, I don't remember when, recently, is that you can make an excuse and say someone is ignorant because they haven't read about it or thought about it, or they haven't been introduced to these ideas yet. But they still show a sign of intellect by approaching the subject in a different way. And if you can do that, even if you're not from the academic circles that I've been in, you can still end up being the top of my list, because you bring diversity of thought. You come from a completely different angle, completely removed from the angle that I'm used to. And you don't know jack shit about what you're talking about, but you still bring something to the table that other people haven't thought about. And then maybe when you learn things, you change your opinion, whatever, it doesn't matter. But you're able to at least approach the problem. It's much better than people who are in my field and who'll be like, yeah, it's just what it is, or the worst word in English language, whatever. No, don't do that. Don't do whatever. No, come on. There's this.
It means so much more than just, you know. It means that I don't have either the resources or the level of interest or the power to just get to the bottom of it, and because it's not important to me. That's all that matters.
Those are the people that I find wouldn't be going to conversations, intellectual conversations for. Everyone else who may not be from the same academic background or whatever, it's fine. Who may be from completely different backgrounds, academically or socially, it's fine. But if you're not willing to give thought to what we're talking about, then I'm speaking down to you. Otherwise, I'm not. I'm not bored by you. I'm not.
You have met people like this here?
People who
you allow yourself to talk down to? Well, it's complicated for you because you don't possess the language.
Yeah.
So there's a very narrow number of people that you can actually communicate with. Correct?
Luckily, many people I've met here have been, in their own way, quite intellectual. Like they have opened my mind in the sense. So I feel like that's I've been really lucky that way. I've met people who enrich the way I think. That's the most I can ask for, yeah.
You know, in a sense, it's interesting what you say, because it aligns a lot with this idea that I came up with a lot of years ago, and I see being echoed everywhere now, all in religion and everywhere. It's that, like, maybe you're right in the sense where I wouldn't go for an intellectual conversation with some of those people who are undereducated or under the capacity that I would enjoy to have an intellectual conversation with. But I never found anybody. I mean, if you pay attention hard enough, this is I profoundly believe that if you pay attention hard enough to somebody, there's some kind of information that you can extract from them. There's always something. I'm not saying it's always worth the effort to go that deep, and sometimes it's very complicated, and I am genuinely, as I learned, I'm genuinely more interested in people than in objects, which is putting me somewhat of a rarity among men, because men are genuinely more interested in objects than in personalities.
Yeah,
but
hence the origin of the word objectification.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Let's not.
Wow, nice. Yeah, the English language sometimes it just blows my mind.
Right.
Sometimes
I threw that at you out of nowhere. But anyway, let's not get into that.
Can you talk about what you do? I mean, I don't want you to.
Sure.
I'm just because here's the thing. What I'm interested in. I've been thinking about you for like a week now.
Oh.
Because last time when we talked, you talked about something of a result that you talked about, and you said that you would share it willingly and publicly. A couple of days ago, I watched Joe Rogan's podcast, and he had an encounter with another scientist who was speaking about very specific molecules that they have developed, a combination of sorts that, well, he wasn't saying the same thing you did, but that genuinely enhances your life, that removes muscle fatigue, that gives you capacity that I, as an unknowing amateur, would regard as superhuman. Very much aligned with what you have said, and it got me interested because he was very open about giving all the information about it, because he has been taking some of the results of these molecules and drugs for like a decade or something.
Yeah,
he has been experimenting on himself. I don't know how ethically that goes with the scientific world.
Well, I mean,
how true is it even? So let's just ask that first.
It's very easy to muddy the waters by hypotheses that are not theories yet, or by molecules that are being tested but not really tested yet. It's very easy to do that. But regardless of that, I mean, I'll throw out this one thing. Think about this. About 200 years ago, if you found a man who lived to the age of 80, you would call him superhuman.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So it's not really that far out. It has never been that far out to be, to improve life to a degree where current crop would think of it as superhuman. And add to that now the fact, and fact I mean it, is that research, not just in biology but in all spheres, is accelerating at an exponential rate, not at a linear rate.
Along with
it's at an
technology.
exponential, exactly.
Sure.
So between the last 200 years, we went from people are dying because of a cold to people are surviving with HIV. In the last 10 years, that could go from, people are dying at the age of 80, people are dying at the age of 150. It's not unimaginable by even the simplest stretch of imagination. Like it's not that hard to imagine. What is harder to imagine is removing the limit on life. That is hard to imagine because you would succumb to some or the other form of fatigue eventually. That's just how life is. But yeah, I mean, it's very likely that in the next couple of decades or so, we will have a way to make people live healthier, longer.
Well, we already do have that. I mean,
yeah. I mean, if I recollect, the way we talked about the last time also was that the limiting factors to human progress as a civilization or as a society now is time.
Is a lifetime.
Yeah, is that we could have geniuses living amongst us, but they don't have any more than 20 to 50 years of productive duration.
And well, you're very generous there.
I'm very generous there.
Extremely.
Like 20 is the lower limit according to me, because most people after their academics, geniuses at least, start showing that.
But how many exampals can you show when some accident just cuts them? So,
not many people have such a rich trail to leave behind. But given that is the highest limitation, I think progress will only multiply once we start extending people's lifespan. The problem with that is that I don't know how generic these kind of health benefits will be, given the way our
generic.
Yeah, I mean, our society is structured, right? Heavily so, with boundaries that are drawn between economic classes,
has to be,
countries, and stuff like that.
Sure.
Given that, and given the knowledge that geniuses don't belong to a single economic or country or economic class or country or stuff, I don't know overall.
In the better countries.
I don't know overall how our ability to extend human life and improve human life living standards is going to impact our ability of innovation, and I can't imagine that will be a direct correlation, but it will be some form
probably
of correlation.
Not. Yeah, sure,
but not a direct one.
Probably not a direct one. Well, that would be some form of a miracle, I think, or that would be enforced with a genocide behind that, where the other people aren't.
No.
It's
impossible that Pfizer comes up with a drug that makes you live 40 more years. Imagine that, and imagine that drug being accessible to kids in Africa. You think that's going to happen? No.
Not very fast.
No,
sure.
No, it will take several more decades after the drug came out. So
this could be a good basis for a new way of thinking in science fiction novels, because it would.
Which is why I am thinking of it.
It could be giving the basis for a new kind of society that I think humanity is aiming at, but it's very hard to achieve. It's like a true meritocracy of well, if somebody is coming up with a genetic pool that is so outrageously beneficial for the rest of humanity, then they should be put on a pedestal and treated as such. But it's not something that after a certain point you can actually influence after birth, right? I mean, it's not a question only of education and social contracts. It's Arthur, who's a very good friend of mine. I have known him for almost for a decade now, and he's one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. I had no idea, first of all, for like several years, because I wasn't paying attention properly. But also, it's not that obvious when somebody possesses capacity that's that much over the average in their surroundings. It's rare.
Exactly. So the thing is, these kind of, usually the way genius shows up or talent shows up, it doesn't have to be genius. It has to be anything that is different. It shows up at random.
Yeah.
In sometimes the most unexpected circumstances. And that's usually because it's driven by forces that are not at our will or at our disposal. It's driven by we don't even know the factors that influence intelligence at this point. But
really don't, actually. I did my research on
clueless. But let's say we did know.
Well,
let's say we did know.
There's some. Well, I don't know if you know this. Just as an addition, some correlation between young people, between nurturing, between the food under 3-year-olds get. It seems like starvation has a insanely negative effect on general intelligence developing out later. But that's pretty much it. We have no idea how to raise IQ, and the rest of the predictors of a human personality that are predictors for success in life are just we have no idea.
No,
it's insane.
It's
frightening as fuck.
You can't pinpoint it. Is the problem.
Yeah, we don't. I don't think we have the words for it properly.
Yeah.
All right.
But I mean, at least for me, to a hammer everything looks like a nail. It would have something to do with basic biology. Is that it would be something to do with genetics that influences intelligence or the ability to absorb knowledge and process it in a certain way. Let's not call it intelligence, because I don't really like that word. Given that it is influenced by genetics, and genetics is excessively random, especially in the human genome, which is 96% junk, and only the 4% of it is actually useful information. It's so random in that void of human genome that you're not able to predict where a certain degree of processing power will show up in in classes, in countries, in impoverished regions, in different races, genders. There's no way to predict it. If the tools, however, are switched from a random mutation to the hands of conscious and consciential humans, then it will cause what I think a kind of shift that we may not be ready for. Is that we might start influencing intelligence or processing power only in certain countries or only in certain economic classes, and that will not be healthy. So if we, for example, extend the lifespan of the richest class who will be able to afford it, and they are, because of the amount of time they have, able to produce most amount of
wealth.
No, I'm talking of intellectual wealth. Like they have the time to go through and process knowledge and wisdom and work on things for a much longer time than the rest of them. I don't know, and I can't. That's why I said I can't make a direct correlation. Is that because intelligence is so hard to pinpoint. We'll have some kind of shift, yes. Like the richest will be the ones who will come up with, let's say, the most because they have more time. But will it still be as productive? I don't know.
Well, these kind of predictions, I think,
I don't know. So
even more straightforward predictions are hard to make.
Yeah. So when I say that yes, because the way we are improving living conditions and lifespan and stuff, it's going to happen at some point that we keep pushing the boundaries ahead and ahead of us. But I don't know that will remove the limits that we talked about on progress as a civilization.
Well,
those limits might still exist regardless of what we do to change.
Well, yeah, no. What exactly are you referring to? Because I think...
See, the conversation that I remember we had is that the biggest challenge in our progress is that we have limited amount of time per individual.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing: if you could already like lengthen the lifetime of somebody like twice by 2, by a factor of 2, you would you would have the capacity to actually generally use everything that they studied for way better. Like, if you think about it, it's kind of insane. If somebody made this meme on 9gag, which made me really. I laughed at it a lot. Well, 9gag, it's a yeah.
I know.
It is a platform.
Nostalgia is what 9gag is for me.
Yeah, that it's like life is like a video game where in the first 16 to 18 to 25 years you're in a tutorial and you have no idea what's up, and it kind of sucks. And it might be that you will live until 35, might be that you will live until 30, because who knows what happens. That's how many geniuses did we have that could have really benefited from extra time?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like we could have millions of humans who can now live to the age of 300, let's say, hypothetically. How many of those are really
worthy of it?
Worthy of that lifespan? Will they really produce more innovative stuff for the civilization?
How expensive would this technology be? That's the question, rather.
I don't know. It's
how close are you to this?
To the technology that can achieve this?
Well, yeah.
It's at a stage where genetically speaking, we can do a lot now to change the genomes of lower organisms. Like bacteria, it's been possible for ages. Higher up the chain you go, you have worms. We've been doing that for a long time. Fruit flies, very easy to do. We can now precisely remove and add genes that we want to, or the parts of a certain gene that we want to change in fruit flies, in mice. And we can, with all possibilities, do this in higher organisms than mice, but we're not allowed to.
Of course not.
Right?
Sure.
And that's the best thing at this point. But if we were allowed to, and only when we are allowed to, can we figure out how likely is it that I do this kind of change in a higher organism, that the higher organism can actually survive this change. We know that mice are doing okay, fairly okay. Like we can get a good degree of, let's call them mutants compared to compared to the normal ones that we didn't change. And based on what change you made, mutants are doing okay. Let's say there are still a lot of there's still a lot of new literature coming out on, for example, the original paper that I remember very clearly from 2013 said that in a single step, and this is in the title of the paper, I'm paraphrasing, but in a single step you can edit multiple genes in the mouse genome. This is the title of the paper. And what they did is, with this technique, it's called CRISPR-Cas, you just use this one method with multiple molecules, let's say, to change the genome of the mouse in several ways. And according to this report, the mouse is okay. You can actually see these changes. Seems like we can achieve this. Following that, of course, and this is how science works, several people try to reproduce it in different species, different mice, under different conditions, different genes, blah, blah, blah. And we always have studies reporting that, yes, you can do this in a single step, but you accidentally get changes in these other things as well, which you didn't want to change. That's if this is true for even 1 out of 100 cases, that's a big no-no.
Oh yeah, because it could have results that you really didn't want.
When I say that's a big no-no, what I mean is leave it for the mice for now.
Yeah.
You don't want to try that for curing cancer, let's say. You don't want to try that. You don't want to risk it. It could be done in the future, but you don't want to risk it because there's that 1 in 100 possibility that you'll change a gene that you didn't even know about or didn't even know existed.
Yeah, and if it spreads, then there's no way of getting it back. Yeah, I know. I understand that.
So, and this is why when generally I gush about the scientific method and science, I don't mean the results that we get or the data. No, I mean this. This is what I gush about, is that we regulate ourselves to the degree that everyone should in society. Is that you say something, I will respectfully disagree with you. I will try my best to prove you wrong or whatever. You might consider me your enemy. But if I end up succeeding in my efforts, then you, if you are a real scientist, will say, oh, okay, well then let's hold off on this.
Yeah, and
we regulate ourselves. In 1970s, when Paul Berg was on the cusp of coming up with ways to use viruses to edit genomes, this was very early in the phase 2 of genomics. We had only 15 years ago discovered the structure of DNA, only just coming to grasp with what a gene means.
Jesus.
But already people were racing to find ways, oh, this is what a gene means, can I change it? So people were already at the forefront of this, yeah? And Paul Berg was one of the guys who was trying to use viruses, which are great vehicles. You can send it in, it will do its job, and then it's gone. It was an ideal vehicle, but he was one of the early ones who tried to use SV40, which is a simian virus. Simian being a species of monkeys is very closely related to humans. So there was a bit of a scare. What if you use the simian virus to do something, but it eventually, and viruses do that, jump to infecting humans, and we end up mutating humans accidentally. This is in the 1970s. We didn't even really understand the genome at that point. The human genome was mapped in 1990.
I think I know this story.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Paul Berg was a guy, and he was like, there was a lot of concern because of this. There was a congressional committee even back in the US, and all the scientists, and Paul Berg writes it best. He was like, we used to be working in the lab on these viruses, and we would get calls from China or Russia or some places, and they would be like, can you send us a batch of these viruses? We want to try a new experiment. And generally we would be pretty cautious, but I can't say that everyone who was working on it was equally cautious. So at one point, all these big names in the field of genomics and genetics at that point came together on their own accord, without any mandate, came together. It's called the Cellular conference. They came together, they scratched their heads, they fought each other, like probably physically fought each other, and made a set of rules that this is what you're allowed to do and this is what you're not allowed to do. At that point, everyone hated it because it slowed down what they thought.
The researchers
progress.
Probably, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, because
understandably,
because you guys, if you apply morality, you're not going to progress.
Yeah,
if
we were at the brink of something that was so exciting that people wanted to be like, let's.
But by that time, you know, the Hiroshima bomb was dumped, and
exactly.
Science had nothing to say about that. It was an interesting experiment.
This is why I use this as a counterexample. People often come up with the example of Hiroshima as something to talk down to scientists, or at least hold against scientists, that, oh yeah, science doesn't know when to stop because look at what happened with Hiroshima. No, scientists are humans.
Exactly.
They're going to be as wrong as they're going to be right sometimes. The Cellular conference is a great example of when scientists can regulate themselves and say, let's stop here. Let's take a look at ourselves. And since then, we haven't had any issue where spontaneously some mutant monkey starts talking, for example. We could have had that, but we don't. Which means it works.
We had more than ever frustrated scientists who are blocked in their progress, sure.
Yeah,
but the problem,
might have been one of them.
I had to explain this to one of my friends who actually live in Germany, who asked, why is it possible, you know, that we are still inventing weapons with such a high rate, and that scientists don't care about morality. And I was like, these are people. They have lives, and they are looking at such a narrow field that in order for them to progress, they have to get rid of that mindset. That's why there has to be a committee over them. And that's why how economics influence your kind of research. The fact of, you know, financing it
That's one way to regulate it.
That's one way to regulate it. It's very frustrating for all of you.
No, we bitch about it quite a lot. And obviously, so it's we do at the end of the day care about what's new and how can I get to that new. That's the driving force. Yes. But this is a great example, and I admire it wholeheartedly, is that we are capable of regulating ourselves as well. Because the best people who understand the threats and the risks involved are us.
You're not looking at humanity that black, in such a black way as most people that I know.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I really don't. I really don't. This is something that comes up in conversations with most people I have, is that I don't look at humanity that.
Well, I find it to be a rare thing, but I find it to be a common voice with me, because it's. No. I profoundly believe in this work. I mean, you can concentrate on the negative things, and there's a lot of that. I mean, that's not very difficult to find. I mean, global warming and all the pollution that we have made, and all the difficulties that we have made ourselves. But it's just, if you think about it, but that happened very closely in the last 100 years.
No, so I was listening to a historian the other day. I was watching a video on YouTube.
Yeah,
I don't remember his name, sadly, which is terrible. But he was a historian, and someone was asking him, like, what do you think history teaches you about progressivism and these ideas that are considered fringe, and then we had these movements. Anyway, the topic at that point is relevant. This is the sentence that I remember crystal clear, is that he said, people like to think that the people who say, oh, it's just how life is, oh, humanity, they always disappoint, and people, they're bound to do something bad eventually. People in general like to think, oh yeah, that guy, he's just a realist. They say, oh, he said, if you say, for example, to a larger crowd that, yeah, a bunch of people together, eventually one of them was supposed to commit a crime or something bad, and everyone agree, yeah, that's just realistically speaking, yeah, that's true. But no, what you call realism, what many people call realism, is actually pessimism.
Sure.
Which is assuming that something bad will happen. And even pop culture does this when they mistakenly quote Murphy's Law by saying, if something can go wrong, then it will. That's not what Murphy's Law says.
Murphy's Law, as far as I can understand, says that if you leave something
all
alone,
probabilities are equal.
Not just that, but if you the default setting on everything that they don't work. It's so they will reduce themselves.
Murphy's Law does not assume the worst in people. Murphy's Law doesn't say something wrong will happen. No, it says anything that can happen will happen. And what about the good parts?
Yeah, and we're not that bad.
No,
I mean,
pessimists love to think that they are realists.
I don't think it's pessimism. I think it's a psychological trait that we have to have, and I think it's evolutionary more than anything else.
I get that some people are always going to be like that.
All of this,
and some people are always.
You have to have that. You have to have that, because we are. I think by default we are biasing towards the negative, because you have to. Because the negative.
At least recently, I feel like.
No. I think it's. If you think about it. If you are concentrating always on the positive, that's a good thing. But if you're forgetting the negative with it, that can fucking kill you. Yeah, that's the issue. Yeah. So I think we are tilting towards
fear of the dark,
something like that. Yeah, it's I don't want to necessarily go there, especially not in this conversation. But the story of a Garden of Eden, it's exactly the same as far as I can understand. It's like
don't eat from the tree of knowledge.
No matter how much you put a constraint over it, no matter how many walls you put up, how much you try to confine your garden, there's always a snake that comes in that you don't expect. It's like there's always something that's sneaking up on you, and that's, if anything, that's Murphy's Law. That it's eventually there's going to be something unexpected happening. So expect the unexpected.
Yeah, but in my opinion, and this is why many people tell me exactly what you just said, is that, oh, you're too optimistic. They say that, but I sometimes I shrug it off. We're like, fine. Relative to you, everyone's an optimist, so fine. But sometimes I counter it by saying, no, I'm realistic, because I'm saying, yes, a lot of shit can go wrong, and we have a history of getting shit wrong, but we also have a history of curing diseases and building things that have changed people's lives forever. And we have as much good as bad, and that is bound to happen.
I think the good starts to overwhelm the
I
bad
think so too.
In some of parts of.
I think so too. We are currently living in a time where things are at their peak best. in most aspects of life.
Well,
we love to complain about the things, that apart, but they are
fair
still
enough.
at
There's
their
a lot
best.
of things to correct and make
There'll
better
always
and
be.
repair. But yes, there'll always be. But
We are living in a time.
what was the longest time you had to go without actually eating?
For,
Like you had to.
me, it's a while, but
Yeah, but-
in generally, yes, it's not that bad nowadays.
And here in this part of the planet, it's fine.
Yeah.
This is a problem that's more or less solved, and it looks like that it's getting solved
In other
over a
places
course of
as well.
time and other places as well. And more people have access to electricity
So,
and
yeah.
to internet. And
I like
it's getting
to-
there. It just takes so much time.
Yeah, I like to keep it realistic by pointing out that both sides exist, not by giving into the easier option, which is that everything is shit and my life is a mess and I'm never going to. No, just be realistic. By that I mean assume as good in people as you do bad. It's okay. You can get good out of people.
Oh, I think.
People can be
Assume?
decent.
What did you say? I assume.
Assume as much good in people as bad, because we do tend to assume more bad in people nowadays. I think, and I don't know about nowadays. That's how just I qualify my statements. But yes, I think.
Oh, I think
people,
it's just in your circles.
People
well,
assume
maybe I'm
bad.
I'm frequenting too optimistic people. I don't know.
Yeah, people love to be
That's
like.
a weird saying.
No, so I'll tell you why I said that, because I think it's also partially because of a recent conversation I had with a friend, which was related to the rape cases in India. Right, in India, it's a big issue that almost always takes up the global platform in some form of news or some horrible thing that happened, and women in India in generally are scared of going out in the dark, or if there's a strange man around them, they will assume the worst in the man. And to be honest, do you blame them?
I don't know. I've never lived there.
I would no. It's a rhetorical question. I wouldn't blame them.
Well,
because yes, for a fact and for sure, not all men are rapists, but enough of them are that at a given point you start assuming that what if this man is also. So I'm not saying that all pessimism is unwarranted.
yeah, but I don't think that only applies to India. I think that
No.
applies to here as
It's
well.
a microcosm which serves as a good example for the point I was making, which is that I get it's warranted that you feel some form of pessimism in that, oh, let's assume the worst and stay safe. But it's unwarranted to apply that to every situation. Like, yeah, everywhere, this is the worst. Like, humans can't do anything good. No, we have done quite a lot of good, yeah.
I would love to know more about how the world you are coming from is organized, because I've never been, and you're the closest thing I will have to
You
understand.
should visit.
I will eventually, and
But you'll not learn as much.
well, I learn as much as I'm ready to learn, and I know what I would be interested in, but I won't be able to understand the social structure because I'm not born in it. I mean, I will understand some of it, but I will certainly not feel it because I will be an outsider. Just look at me. The very reason why I'm treated well here by the police, for example, I'm a Caucasian male, fairly young. I speak the language well enough, and some others. I'm trying to express myself in a very articulate way. I'm not doing immensely stupid shit all the time. So, you know, there are reasons. But there, in your country, I would be an outlaw just by looking at me. Until I open my mouth here, nobody hears that I wasn't born in France.
For you, in my country, if we're talking specifically my country, you'd be not an outlaw. You'd probably be put on a pedestal.
But it is a role of the of an outsider. Then
An outsider.
Yeah,
Definitely take the role of an
I meant
outsider.
rather that, because an outlaw is a pejorative.
Yeah.
No, I probably not, because they would assume I have money, and compared to most or some of the parts of India which are large enough, yes, I probably would possess a richness.
Most
I think
likely will.
even you do here.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
Thank God you do, but it is because of the economy and not because.
No, it's just the way the currency and the economy is shaped. You can't help it.
That's
But yeah, well, socially, on the outside, I'll just say it is far more complex and non-binary than European societies. I don't think European societies are binary, but you know, it's far more diverse and complex. I'm just talking of social structure at this point.
I wonder how much you can compare it to European societies. Cause
I think not at all. But
I mean, on the sense that how long has it been that you actually experience it? I mean, it's not the same.
No, but what I guess, again, I don't know how accurately it represents it, but I'm not unfamiliar with European culture even before I came to Europe.
Sure.
Unlike Indian culture, which is not flashed onto every TV show and movie you've ever seen.
How do women react to you here?
I have to say they're charmed.
Well, you are very charming, no question about that.
No.
You look good and you're intelligent, so obviously. But I mean, I hear the opinion of this region, Alsace in particular, that they are very racist. If not in Strasbourg, then on the outside of it.
Funny you say that. Yeah,
have you had?
No, not en masse. I wouldn't say that I've had. For example, the day I came here, the first day I landed here, which was 1 year, 1 month, and 2 days ago, I was absolutely clueless. Yeah,
well,
absolutely clueless. Didn't speak more than 1 or 2 words of the language. Had no idea that there are trams here, and I stood at a tram stop. Trust me, I'm not at all exaggerating this. And I stood at a tram stop, wondering what to do now. And there were 2 old ladies over there, at the tram stop. They did not speak more than 1 or 2 words of English, and I did not speak 1 or 2 words of French. Somehow we communicated, and they helped me not just buy the ticket, get on the tram, get out at the stop that I showed them on my phone. This is where I want to go, and it said Observatoire, and I was like, this is where I want to go. And they probably didn't. I don't know how much they understood, but whatever we understood, they helped me throughout the way. They're like, and when they got in, when someone got in, they're like, oh, there's a seat, you can go sit there. And I sat there. I had a bunch of luggage with me, and then when my stop came, they're like, the stop after this is yours, so get ready to get out. And they're like, and they're like, okay, and so.
Sounds like very helpful.
Absolute strangers, yeah?
Yeah.
And 2 old ladies, not even like university students who can speak my language or understand my condition. No, 2 old ladies helped me. So, I would never say that my experience over here has been that bad. But, yes, I do see a degree of inherent pride, which is that we are here and you are from there. Sometimes it does show pretty clearly, but I don't know to what degree I can ascribe it to being Alsatian versus being any other. Yeah,
you would have to see rest of France.
That's what.
That.
See, I can't at this point say it's. But it's
unfortunately, I won't be in a better position to tell you that, because anything that I had, literally any kind of reception I had was positive. I never had. Except for one encounter that I had when I was working in a breakfast service. I've never had anybody who talked down upon me, and that wasn't because I was a foreigner. It was because I was working at a breakfast service in a hotel, so I was to this person somebody from the lower classes, but I could have been born there. It didn't matter.
Yeah, I mean to be absolutely honest, given the way I look at things, it's very difficult to offend me. So maybe someone did and I didn't even like notice it, because too often it happens that I'm the one making jokes on myself and my country and where I come from, that other people don't get the chance to be racist to me. So it's very likely that I've been around racists and they just didn't get their opportunity.
It would be funny, but I don't think that that's the case.
No. But
because in order for you to communicate with them, you have to speak English. So by that time, that means that it's a certain education, certain generation. Yeah, so
this is exactly true. Yeah. Wherever I felt like, I'm being treated a bit differently, it's always been amongst people or a person who does not speak English well enough or is not of the same academic degree or level or not the same generation. It's all the 4 cases that I can remember of that happening have been people like this.
Now, the $4 million question. You have been recently to Paris.
Yeah.
How was it?
Equal parts terrible, equal parts familiar.
You were with the missus, right?
I don't call her that.
I don't know how to call her.
No.
The girlfriend.
We went together, and
she speaks
French?
French, perfectly, I imagine.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Perfect.
if communication, if communication is becoming a necessity, then she would be there for anything detailed.
Yeah, many times I joke, oh, I brought my translator along with me.
Sometimes this is how it starts. I mean,
she takes it well half the time. So no, she has a good sense of humor, which is lucky for
thank
me.
God.
And no, what I was saying is Paris. It was like familiar in part because for the first time I felt like I'm in a big city. The only other time I felt like this was in Berlin, but I didn't stay there long enough to enjoy it. But Paris felt like a big city. I got the same feeling I had when I was in Bombay, which is like you see a rat here and there, you smell something but you can't place it, and you have crowds and places where the crowd just carries you with it. That's familiar. And when I say familiar, I mean that I was happy in it. Even though it was absolutely disgusting, I was happy in that environment. Where I don't know how to describe it. Perhaps you'll understand, but I don't know how many people get that feeling of being in a city. You know?
No, it's not that part of what interests me. Is that you are also infatuated by the same kind of US culture that all of us are. Even how you try to speak is
influenced by that, definitely.
Definitely. And part of the reason why I wanted this podcast to be broadcasted in several languages with subtitles is because I have no other way to be able to propagate the French culture, especially those people I found very interesting who only speak French. I want to have a conversation with them because I have the impression that people in the US have a picture of France that is solely based on the French Charles de Gaulle airport. And and that's it. And that's not France at all.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And what I'm looking for is like not a confirmation to that, but it's like a joke how people are rude to you in France, and it's not the case.
No,
they are rude to you in Paris because they are frustrated because there's too many people there.
Go to Bombay; they're rude to you in Bombay too. It's a city. People have their own shit to do.
Bombay isn't supposed to be, the most romantic city over them all. And it's not. And I don't think Paris is. I mean,
no, it's not.
There are some
Paris gets romanticized far too much, I think.
There are parts. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Having seen a lot of big cities, I think it's called the most romantic place for a good reason. But you have to keep remembering that it is a big city.
Yeah, it's a big city.
So 2 streets away, it might not be that romantic.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But there is an inherent charm of big cities for me that I loved and I enjoyed when I was in Paris. But at the same time, we had trouble with someone stealing our stuff once successfully, and once I thwarted the guy who was trying to steal stuff from our bags. So that way it was terrible. So it was like half and half, I would say. But overall, even when that happened, the mugging happened, I was laughing at the end of it because I was like, yeah, now I'm in a big city. Now it feels like I'm in an actual big city. Because this is funny because back in Bombay, so I come from a fairly small town, like where I grew up. It's a small town.
Where is it exactly?
It's located about 300 kilometers away from Mumbai.
I'm asking because we could do this. Let me show you.
Use the maps? Okay.
let me see if we could do this.
That'd be fun.
We could do something like that.
Yeah, if you go to maps, I can tell you exactly where to go.
Sure. Dude, I built this thing.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
We'll
pretty
try.
Cool. It's a fairly small townish. Won't even.
How do you spell it?
K-A-R-J.
Like G or J?
J as in Joker. A-T.
India.
Yes, but I hope it goes to the right Karjat. Karjat, yeah. There's several Karjats in. Oh my God, Karjat people represent, yo. Come to YouTube and like and subscribe. Let's be like that. I'm going to attract like at least 5 people to your podcast now by saying that.
Well, dude,
Okay.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think that looks in the vicinity of where I.
No, it shows it. I just de-zoomed already because
Okay, you want to show in the
yeah, because
perspective.
that's the part of the planet
Yeah.
like I know more about the other part. No, that's a part of the planet I have zero knowledge of, and
Yeah, I'll try my best in the next
Oh my
10 or
God.
15 minutes to give you an idea of it. But that's where I come from, and that's the town that you can't see because you zoomed out is like really small. Yeah,
okay.
like I don't know. What do you imagine? Give me a name of a town over here that you think is like a really small town. For example, Colmar. Would you say is a town in your imagination?
No, Colmar is a city where I lived before. Sulzufora,
Colmar is
like
a
4,000 people. Now that's a small village.
4,000 people.
I'd say, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know Sebastian Loeb?
But actually, number of people is not the best way to compare anything to India because we will outnumber you guys in that
Well,
all the time. But it's like it has one English medium school and one Zilla Parishad, which is like the local school. That's it.
how many people?
It has I don't really know. I think it's somewhere around 2,000 or so. 2,000 to 3,000. It can't be more than that.
It is a really small village, especially.
It's really and it's very close to the hillside. So part of it is just rich people with their farmhouses and vacation homes and stuff. So it's the countryside experience.
Wow.
For rich people from Bombay, and it's beautiful in monsoon, for example. But it's a really small town. So that's where I come from. Yeah.
Wow.
And when I started my education and stuff, I would have to go to Mumbai or some other city or something like that. I remember vividly. My wallet used to be in my back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
The moment I reached the city, I would move it to my front pocket because I'd be like, yeah, this is where the pickpocketing happens. And I went to Paris, and that's exactly what happened.
Well,
it was like, yeah, now I'm in a big city.
I'm sorry for this horrible experience you had, but you gotta at least say that professional pickpockets are professional.
Yes.
Yeah, they knew.
The quality of pickpocketing in Paris.
So sorry.
No.
I've been to Paris 3-4 times.
Yeah.
Very short times. Every
Yeah.
single time, nothing. I think it's part of because of how you look, because you can see it from far away that you are a tourist.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I get that. Yeah, I mean the hustle.
Oh no, that's not true. I actually have been attacked once, and it was
Wow.
Arthur whose suggestion from the night or some nights before helped me. Yeah, I was coming home from a work at the local train station. I was doing aller-retour, so going back and forth every 3-4 weeks, which I am pretty much doing, or I'm gonna do right now. And very late at night, I had a train to catch, and somebody attacked me, and I had my old laptop with me, and because I was lazy and because I wasn't paying attention, every single thing that I've been working on for the past 5 years been on this computer without a backup. I never did that ever again.
Yeah.
I hit the guy on his neck. He hit me first. I had a bloody eye afterwards. And I hit him on the neck, expecting that his blood pressure would go up so high in his head that he would lose consciousness. And this is exactly what happened.
Yeah. That's
So
nice.
yeah, it's I hit him as hard as I could, and being as skinny as I am, I hit him. Arthur was the one to actually suggest
Demonstrate
this.
that. Yeah.
No. Well, thank God he didn't demonstrate it, but he talked about it. And a few nights later, I was able to try it out, and it was a life-changing experience because the guy just collapsed. I never saw anything like that. I don't know how to fight. I never knew how to fight, and I was scared. And
That's a useful tactic.
Yeah, and that was my one of the very few properties that I actually cherished, and I had all my work on it, all of it. So
No, that's-
I actually have that computer to this day. So
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
No, I had always heard most of the stories I've heard about Paris have been because they were from
It's
tourists. No, because they were mainly from tourists, friends of mine or classmates of mine who essentially visited Paris. Stories that I've heard about Paris have always been, be careful, you can get mugged or something stolen.
Sure.
So when I went there, I did have a bit of that in my mind, I guess. But I mean, I wasn't expecting that it would be so prevalent. I thought these are a little bit exaggerated, but I guess not.
Well, but I think either of you actually were careful enough.
Yeah.
Backpacks on your back.
Yeah, it's a big
tourist stuff in your hands.
Yeah.
They see you very
straight
fast.
away.
That's their job. So.
But the second time someone tried, I caught them in action. I was like, and I just started laughing because I was like. I don't know. I think the main reason I remember laughing was like, dude, like, what are you doing? I can see you trying to steal my stuff. And I just started laughing at him, and he got visibly scared. I guess he thought I would hit him or something.
It's rarely a reaction, people.
Yeah, but given how non-violent I wasn't ever going to hit him unless he hit someone first or hit me or tried to hit me first. So I just started laughing and like, what are you doing? Like, why is your hand? I can see you trying to steal me. And he just he looked at me like that and just ran in the opposite direction. And we were able to.
You're quite a scarecrow, apparently.
I guess I must have been with all the brown skin and all that.
Some more?
Yeah, sure.
How about I give it to you.
Yeah.
Serve yourself, because you're in my home, which is yours too. How about? It's almost been 2 hours. How about we keep a bit of pause? I'm going to piss myself.
Yeah, do that. Don't do that here.
And then, well, I'm home. You know, I can.
So you're the one who's going to wipe it off. So
we'll see about that. Mixing headphones. Are you happy?
With the with the headphones?
No, well, with the headphones, with life.
No, yeah. In general,
different levels of analysis, but yeah.
I think I'm at a fairly good place right now. I'm happy.
I think you are. There's very few people I know here look happy.
Yeah.
You certainly seem to.
That's good. That's good.
It is something.
The thing about being happy is that if other people can tell you're happy, for me at least this is true, yeah? I'm very expressive. When I am happy, it shows quite so. Like, it's not easy for me to hide my...
To be honest, I don't think I've seen you unhappy either.
Yeah.
I think you were less happy before your girlfriend came into place, but I think something was missing, but you weren't unhappy.
Let's leave this part in. I'm kidding.
Well, I'm sure you're happier with her being around, otherwise you would break up. So, that's, you know.
I'm kidding. I have to make a joke to diffuse the drama.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
About this.
No, for me it's like, of course, without a doubt, I come from a fairly patriarchal background, and no, I don't think growing up, essentially, women had a large voice, presence. Yes, sure, it's not like any society can do without that, but a voice, like where they could actually influence the way I think and all, less so.
No, in your life, not in the general. I meant in your upbringing.
Yeah. But the later part of my life, where actually I always kind of broke out of it, and whenever I started making my own friends and my own connections, yes, women have played a large role in the way I have grown up since then, but not early on.
Oh, I'm talking way before that.
No, not really that much. But essentially, the reason I
don't think you would remember. It's before
probably.
The age of 3. So
probably.
But sure. I mean, I am interested in this subject though.
Yeah.
Because how I don't understand. To be honest, how things work here at the moment. I don't think anybody really does. It's very chaotic between men and women. That's why. Well, would you say that you find that the rules here are very different from where you are from?
Yes, certainly.
How so?
Well, in terms of just interaction between men and women, for example, the rules of engagement, if to borrow the term from the military, are quite different. In India, in many cases, not all, but many cases, men have a far more dominant position where they can and many times do demand things or expect things of women just naturally, as if it's just the way it's supposed to be.
Well, sometimes this happens here too. But
yeah, it's less likely over here that a girl would just be okay with that, because here,
not in the city.
Yeah, here you have a culture where people tend to know their worth more than back in India. Back in India, it's very easy to get muddied ideas of what your worth is, especially in terms of the power dynamics between men and women. If that's the context we're talking in, then definitely yes, the rules are different. In any other context, even then the rules are different. Just if you meet a stranger, the rules of engagement are quite different. In India, it's not the same kind of politeness is not the same. Over here, in my opinion, politeness seems far too structured, in that it has to be, say this, 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 and this, and then you're polite. In India, everyone will act like they've known you since their childhood.
Well, what if you didn't know them?
They act like, oh, you tu to mera yaar hai, this is what you say. You're my friend, and it's fine. You can just, we will hang out, and you met that person 5 minutes ago, but they'll still act like that. The rules of engagement are quite different. And this is between sometimes just strangers. Like, you sit in a crowded train and the guy next to you will start talking to you about his marital problems, and you're like, why are you telling me? You don't know. No one would be expected or would normally do that here.
It never happened to me here either, to be honest.
It happened several times on the train in India. To me, more so to my dad, because he was usually the age who would end up in these kind of situations. but yeah, it's the rules of engagement are quite different. What we consider friendly over there, over here it would be considered as like creepy or something. So it's different. But generally, there is no structured politeness in India. Like, we don't say bon appetit, for example. There's no such thing. You just start eating. there's no such thing as wishing everyone every time you see them. No, it's at sometimes it's just casual.
Do you say hello every morning when they meet the family members you are sleeping in the
family
same house?
members? No. No. Between friends, you may. Again, this depends on where you.
Yeah, but these are small differences.
Yeah, small differences, but they're pretty noticeable. At least in France, I don't know other countries, but here for sure there's a structure to politeness, in the sense that there are etiquettes. You know.
Yeah.
You do this and then you're polite. Otherwise, you're almost rude.
I don't really understand it either. To be honest.
And
actually, it creeps me out.
And just like any other culture, this is something I'm gonna have to get used to. I'm not going to say that. Oh, I don't believe in. No, it's good. It's okay. I'll get used to it over time, and I already have, I think, to a fair degree.
Well, in that regard, I think you have an advantage that I don't. Is that you look different, so people automatically assume that you are different.
It's true.
With me, that's a bit more complicated in this manner.
Yeah,
I don't really understand the rules of engagement here when it comes to French women at all. And I tried several times to talk to French women about that, but I don't think they understand it either. The more I look into it, and the more I try to articulate it, the less clear it becomes. So after just a moment, I just abandoned the idea of understanding it, because it's more about, like, the language itself. At the beginning, it's more about like repeating what you hear, so you would talk like other people talk. Then you learn how to write it and the grammar, but not the other way around, like us. And if you do it the other way around, then it's weird for you. Then people don't know how to write their own mother tongue. But it's obvious because it's after. Yeah, so it's weird. It's
no, in terms of communication, it can be quite tricky anywhere. The thing is, I agree with what you say in some degree, but the only thing I would add is that I don't believe there is such a thing as believe there is such a thing as French women are like this, or Indian women are
French
like
women
this.
I attract. Let's just say that.
Yeah, that's a very
narrowing.
Far too
Yeah, specific. I know. It's a certain generation, certain age,
Yeah.
certain type, certain. It's
or maybe just the women that you have met,
and
which
that's
would be miraculous, that degree of chance, but it's possible and far more likely that there are
No, it's me. It's obviously me.
people
I'm
out
the
there
weird one
who
here.
would be.
But it's like in Hungary, I find it to be obviously more natural to me because I was born in it, so I understand it more.
That's true.
In England, that was easy to understand. That wasn't very difficult to see how people were, especially legal aliens, like strangers, like those who come from abroad. Those were easier to understand, but the locals here, it's like how I could say it is not gonna put them into a nice light, and it is probably my own ignorance, not understanding how it should function and how again, I don't think I'm a very good looking guy in the broad, but I mean thanks, but I know. And I have extremely high expectations because I'm coming from a country where, well, according to me, 75% of the girls are fucking gorgeous. And so, you know, I have a high... Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, for sure.
It's complicated to communicate with them, especially because my French is wretched. And I know that I don't have the tolerance and the patience anymore to learn much more. Not enough to be seductive the way I was able to in English.
But
and it is, you know, if you speak a language in a shit way.
Can I bounce off of that a bit?
Go ahead.
In a slightly different but related direction. Why do you approach French women with the expectation or the intention of either getting the same experience that you would have with Hungarian women, or whatever it is that you have set in your mind as the expected route it would take? What about? I'm sure this is not true. I'm sure you meet women who you're approaching without any preconceived notions.
All of them.
But if you were to do that all the time, then it would be far less disappointing.
I am doing that all the time. It's just statistics show that it comes off when I try my best and I use well, the skills I developed myself in Hungary or in other countries to approach women and play with those very few things that I know I am good with. I can't use them in French for some reason.
You should just forget it.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that's the only thing I have.
No, and again, this is my opinion. Yeah, it's not a fact. The reason I think you should forget it is because I don't think you can ever have a rule or a protocol in these regards.
You think of something too strict in this regard. All right, let's go through this. This is a good subject. Just a second.
Yeah. We'll keep.
What do women want?
We'll keep that in.
Now this is something that's gonna cause an outrage.
What do women want?
But
now?
I would.
First off, no one should be concerned with that question, except for the woman who is thinking this in her own mind.
Okay, fair enough. You're right. Yeah. It's a lousy way to ask this question. What in your experience, what do women look for when? Well, exactly. Yeah. How should I articulate this?
It's difficult. See, I can see the rope that you're walking. It's like you want to talk about, let's say, and for lack of better word, I'm going to use a scientific term for this: mating rituals. You're talking about what we call in fruit flies mating rituals. How do you court?
Do you court?
Court. C-O-U-R-T. Courting habits.
Okay.
It's for example, a fruit fly male flaps one wing first, then the other wing, then both wings, then does a circle, and that's courtship. That's the fruit fly male asking a girl out, basically. Fun fact of the day. But I may have
Jesus Christ.
I may have changed or forgotten some details, but it involves a lot of circles and wings and stuff. Point is,
that's what they can do. I mean,
courtship
they don't have
rituals
very expressive
exist.
faces. I saw them in magnificent.
Courtship rituals exist in almost all species that we know of.
Sure.
And for a good reason. It's like the you up question that we have now. It's like to know the intentions of the other partner. If you do the courtship ritual, you are letting the opposite gender, or in case of sheep and dolphins and other species, sometimes the same gender. But you're letting the other person know that
you are interested.
You up.
Very clearly.
So you definitely up. So courtship rituals exist for a good reason.
Yes.
But in lower organisms, they are fairly simple because of a lower, at least what we think is a lower form of consciousness, is that they don't have to deal with the same complexity that we humans deal with. The same degree of diversity of thought
it's
and
very
things.
Interesting you bring this up. You see this book here. I've been I received this for Christmas from my mother. I actually received it in February because thanks for shipping, Hungary. No, not Hungary, but the Hungarian company that didn't ship it right. I'm going down behind Musée d'Art Moderne to read so that I would get some exposure of sunlight. And this last week I've been watching pigeons. And well, it is quite hot.
Yeah,
the weather is getting good, and I started watching the mating rituals of pigeons. I actually recognized some of the males, and what the weirdest thing was for me is that the female is always running away, but the moment the male stops for something, like afraid, looks around, and the female just looks back and stops, keeping the same distance and waits.
There's a chase. There's a certain factor of chase involved in many species. Not all, but many species.
I was like, I know this tactic.
And it's funny. This is the thing, and this is something that we should remind ourselves all the time, is that these are courtship rituals that we have observed in organisms that are in fact a bit reductionist in the way they live. They live driven largely, or not all organisms, but many of these live their life driven by instincts.
Definitely.
We don't. We have. I mean, we do, but we have so much more than just that at this point.
Well, yeah.
As humans, we have come to a point where many of us actually ignore our instinct. Food is an instinct. I know many people who have voluntary anorexia.
Okay.
We are way more complex than that. So,
well, there are mechanisms that are counter.
Courtship rituals are a hell of a lot degree more complicated in humans, which means, by corollary, that you can't have the same rules when you interact with humans of a different gender or same gender, whatever, because you can't really set it into a box. You can't say this will work.
I know
9 out of 10 times or 6 out of 10. You just can't say.
Sure.
Given that, there is no way that I can or you can or anyone can formulate the way to get the best out of this.
I completely agree.
And at the same time, you do have to try.
You do.
At the same time, you do have to try to find the best courtship ritual for you.
Well, otherwise you're pretty fucking lost.
You're lost.
No, I know. I know. It's just I find it to be the French one particular, I can't get a grasp on it, while I was able to fairly, I wouldn't say understand, but I felt the borderlines of different cultures. But the French one, I have a hard time.
So that's what. So I'll try to bring it back to the question where you started, and then it was a bit difficult to articulate. Is that what do women want? And that question is based around this courtship ritual. Is that in almost all species, it's based on what does the other partner want. Parrots, for example, use male parrots specifically have multicolored feathers in their wings, and that's a way to show that
birds do that.
That I have genetic variety in me. Look at those good genes I have, and I can be a male who has high testosterone, which weakens your immunity, but I can still look healthy. Look at me. These are the genes you want, and that's what women want in parrots. In many species, this is what women want or men want, depending on who is the seductress or the seductor or whatever. It's not always the males in all species. But because of the variety of issues that humans want inherently, and it's not just instinct driven. Instincts are what? Food, survival, reproduction. These are some of the most basic, some of the most basic instincts, right? And the last one, reproduction, is the one that we are talking about when it comes to courtship rituals. But humans are not limited to those three instincts at all. So
we have a layer above it.
We have layers above it. Because of that, it's very difficult to have an answer to the question what women want. As much as you would want to use that as a tactic to courtship ritual, all of your evolutionary history teaches you that you should use that as a tactic to courtship rituals. You shouldn't.
Well, here's the problem. In order to understand a solvable problem, you have to simplify it to the point where it becomes meaningless in order to actually get a grasp on which direction to start solving it. That's my idea. I'm not saying that it cannot work the way I approach it, obviously, because the level of reductionism removes real life scenarios of the examples that I can come up with. But there are general traits still that can be extracted from this way of thinking, and these were more often than not useful for me while I was going out to chase somebody who I find interesting. So
yeah, I guess
there are, and I think, you know, you can't easily generalize humanity in one trait, but everybody wants to connect.
Yeah,
that's as big of a generalization as I can get.
No, this is true. Everyone wants to connect.
So,
but
some generalizations work.
Yes, and generalization exists for a reason.
Yes, because you have no other way to think.
Yeah, some degree of reductionism is good, but as beings that are capable of using this degree of logic and rationality, we should be aware that we are the ones who are thinking about ourselves. It's far more meta, which means that while generalizations are good and easy and all that,
what makes you think that I don't know that? I mean,
no. I'm not saying you don't know that. I'm saying this is where people get it wrong when they ask the question, "What women want?" Is that you generalize it to a degree, but you miss the.
No. I do agree. It's a poorly put question.
Yeah, but
there are traits that you can name very easily that apply to a majority of women that I personally attract, which is again a narrow type of what exists. And again, since it's the woman who chooses, I mean, in
the power dynamics,
in the dynamic that I agree with, then it's gonna be even more narrow. That's why.
No, it's true. It's true that
it rarely works out, but it does.
You have to narrow down to the kind of person you want to attract, and then hope that.
Well, I do have to. Sure.
Yeah, and then hope that whatever you are is attracted to that other person.
Let me ask you this then: how the women you are interested in, what do they generally wanted so far?
Well, I mean, there's a good reason why I haven't gotten the chance to date all the women that I wanted so far, is because some of them wanted someone who is better looking. Some of them wanted maybe, I mean, at least in one case, I know it was like, hey, you're just ugly. And I was like, okay then.
Well, yeah, that's fine. That's the best you will ever get.
In other cases, it was like, oh, you're just a friend, which is the worst thing, by the way. I'm kidding. It doesn't matter.
That's the best thing when they say you're ugly, because that's not on
it's
you.
There's good answer.
There's literally nothing you can do.
In my opinion, girls, tell someone you're ugly instead of telling them you're just friends, because it's a clear-cut answer. Because it's like, yes, this is the reason why. Good. Finality to it. It's a conclusion, end of story. Yeah,
I don't want your genes, but this is. But as a man,
in the end, what
I learned is, and this is, I don't see this thought anywhere, and I see it as a problem. I had to learn it by many failures, that this is not something personal. I mean,
no,
it happens to me also that I see someone and I'm like, nah.
In a sense,
and it's fine.
It's going to be a hit and a miss. most of the times.
No, it's gonna be a miss most of the time.
Most of the times.
Yes.
So I mean, people who get offended by being friend zoned and the fact that that term exists, just get over yourself.
No, well, being friend zoned, I think. No, that's a more complicated problem. Than
being given the excuse that you're just a friend to me is real, but the reason the word friend zoned exists is because men associate a connotation to it, which is that, oh, I will never get into her pants because I'm friend zoned.
Yes.
And I'm like,
exactly.
No,
but she said
the reasons are probably far more significant than you're just a friend.
But it doesn't matter.
Move on.
It doesn't matter.
No, I would really like these people to think of it more profoundly. It's not you're not friend zoned, you're not wanted.
Well,
by that person in that sexual way. You can still be friends with someone.
I have to play the devil's advocate here. I don't want to, because I agree with you. Because when you are I've been friend zoned once. It was horribly painful. It lasted years. It ended up in such a drama that I turned everything upside down around myself. I'm really not proud of the outcome, but that was the lesson that taught me that I'll never come close to a situation like this again. Because next time when a girl told to me that let's just be friends, I mean, let's just no. Goodbye.
Yeah, it either works or it doesn't work.
You know,
if
you don't want me that way, that's cool. I can't say no to the fact that I'm attracted to you. It is driving me crazy. So if I have to choose between you being a part in my life or not at all, I go away because it's easier for me to handle. And I think it's a part of being a man, not being able to say no to this kind of physical attraction. I mean, we are by evolution, I think the majority of us is destined to go for it and tolerate it when you fail.
Yeah.
Which means that you go for it more times than than you succeed.
Yeah.
And yeah, in order to do that, you know, if somebody bounces back and they say no, if I keep these people in my circles, that I'm going to keep going for it, and it just makes no sense. Yeah. It happened to me 3 or 4 times in my life. And it's just like,
no,
I was like, no, let's just, because the first time it lasted years. It was fucking horrible. And oh my God,
we were all young and stupid.
Yeah. I'm really not proud, but that taught me well. That I'll never do that again. And but that's you are avoiding a big question that I think
possibly because I forgot the question.
What are the common traits
that you would want to appeal to in a woman?
That I think no. Okay, well, no. Let's turn it around, because I'm trying to ask a question that I'm trying to explain to you. That's okay. I have a hypothesis. That,
okay.
In the same way, all women I have ever encountered, and that's a very small portion of the population, so let's just make sure that's out there. They all want the same thing. Not in the same proportions even, but it's kind of the same trait characteristics. You know?
But I don't know. I kind of disagree with the premise already.
How?
I don't think all women want same or
all women
things.
I met. That's
all women you've met.
Yeah, I haven't met everybody.
Well, that's okay.
I met a very narrow.
Well, that's a premise I can't disagree with, because I don't know all the women you've met.
And thank God, because I wouldn't have no chance.
No, I have not. No.
Yeah, no. Some of them didn't speak any English. So.
I'd have no. But the thing is, I guess the biggest hurdle I'm having with getting to the question that you're asking is that.
Yeah, maybe I'm generalizing too much.
No.
I don't want it to be reductionist or
yeah, I'm having trouble with
pejorative even.
With getting to the premise, which is that you are. I understand the question in a broader sense, which is regarding courtship rituals and how to get someone attracted who you are interested in. I get the broader sense of the question, but everything other than that, I don't know. I get stuck at somewhere between that and the reductionism that has to come along with this question.
Well, I am trying to explain my point of view and why I don't understand the courtship rituals of French women that I encountered here from a certain generation and a certain educational level. It's for a very, very good reason. I think it's that those women that I met want pretty much the same things. This is partly why they attract me, probably. The problem is that my lack of knowledge in the French language does not allow me to excel at the one thing that usually had an effect on women, which is, I don't know, articulated.
I mean, communication is like key.
I mean, I'm not gonna dominate any women with my muscles or the amount of money or the supercars I have, or well.
I mean, you shouldn't.
And even if I do, if I did, that's not the kind of women that I would be interested in. Yeah, I have to have a conversation, and the problem is that I can't.
Yeah. Because
I appear as somebody stupid because I don't master the language that well. Now the issue is, I don't have the patience to learn it.
No, I mean, I would agree with you on that. Is that if all the thoughts you have in your head, which is, like you said, your skill set, because you're a pretty thoughtful person, and it is by far one of the best things a person can have is a good process of thought. But if you can't communicate,
or a big dick, I mean, it depends on what kind of women, or what kind of partner you're looking for. I mean, no, that's the generalization I can't agree with.
So one porn star for me, please. Thank you. No, given that is a skill set and that is the one that you would want to apply in the situation, communication is very important. So if you can't put it in the French language the same way you articulate it in your own head, then I get why it would be troublesome to keep.
Do you speak any other language between English and your own?
In total, I speak 4 languages.
Which one do you speak least?
Least? I speak least Tamil, because I didn't really learn it beyond the interaction between me and one of my. No.
How big of a vocabulary would you say you have?
Enough to have a conversation about how my day was and how your day was and what are we doing for, like just the mundane conversations I can get by. Any conversation where I have to articulate my thoughts, I'd have big trouble.
That's pretty much where I am. I think well, I have some vocabulary in French. The weirdest kind.
No, I'm far lower than that in French right now. But I will learn over the time as soon as I can, and I think Anna keeps reminding me to learn French, and she's so right about it. I have to learn French, and I want to.
You don't have to.
French.
You just should.
I don't have to. This is very true. I just should. I don't have to because I live in the kind of work life where I could practically not learn French my whole time here and get by. But I want to, and I should. It's just that I can't get to it yet. I need to have a structured time dedicated to it. Like this is when you learn French.
That's exactly what I would avoid.
Yeah, I'm learning at a pace which is more like based on interaction. Like, oh, you said this word. What did you say? And I do this. You can ask most of the friends I hang out with. They get these questions from me the most. Oh, you said this word. What did you say? How do you spell it? And what does it mean? I ask this far too often. But at the end of the day, I am able to use these words to form a sentence or two.
No, it's a good idea.
Which is very satisfactory, but it's very slow.
And it breaks a conversation, which is...
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
So I need a better system to learn French in a faster way. But
well, we could talk about this because I think I'm pretty good at this, and I have come up with a system that works very well for me. It never worked anywhere in a schooling system because I don't think. I think genuinely I just copy how we learn as kids, and not as scholars, because that's my biggest worry about academia. Also, is that learning something from a paper in a structured mindset, it never worked for me. I'm not sure I couldn't do it if the subject was interesting, because I never tried that. But anything like that never worked for me. But what worked is copying 3-year-olds. how kids learn language. I just watch them.
Yeah. They
Copy everything that's around them,
Yeah.
and they watch for a reaction.
That's exactly what I'm doing now with French. I copy everything. I repeat it until I get it right.
Now,
I guess.
what they do is they take it very incrementally. Is that they go just a little bit above of their capacity, and what's also very important is they always practice with somebody who actually masters the thing that they want. That's the most important thing about it. That's why you learn languages the most effectively from your parents. They already have a 20+ year of experience in that field. And music is a very good example. I learned music for a very long while. I learned music the very same way, copying everything I heard, trying to imitate, trying to understand what the basis of a bigger problem is. Like if you're looking for sound, like if you're looking for a certain type of character, whether it's a picking hand, whether it's an EQ, whether it's an amplifier that's set differently, to try to understand where the difference comes from and break it down to smaller parts and practice that and then go with that. And that always worked for me. I see
that's a good strategy.
I see a very good pattern in languages. As far as I'm concerned, any language that I speak, which is, well, I speak 3 languages fluently. My French is by far the worst. My Hungarian is getting very weak because I'm not using it.
Yeah.
But I understand pretty well. I read a lot because of an ex and also because of my family, because I read a lot now. So first, okay.
I think that's a good strategy. It's just that I don't know how fast it is. I'd imagine it's pretty slow.
I was able to speak French in 10 days.
Oh.
When I came here. I worked on nothing else though. We arrived to Strasbourg. I had an apartment and we had to take care of the electricity coming in. 10 days.
No.
I'm not saying it was articulate or it was well chosen or it was clumsy at best. No, I remember literally that I had such a headache after the 10th day. I had to lay down and it was a day until it went away, which is rare in my case. But I simplify it because generally I think the very basis of any language that you actually want to speak is not very complicated. The thoughts are in themselves are not very complicated. Either you want to state something, either you want to ask something, either you want to propose an abstraction, like something could have happened in the future, something has happened in the past.
But that's basic communication 101.
Well,
that remains pretty constant.
It is, but if you see, as far as I can see, this is like, what would be a good example for this? It's like puzzle pieces that climb on together so well. It's like you have basic sentence forms. You learn one sentence that I have a hard time putting this in words in English, but the moment you state something in English, a simple sentence with an object, a subject, a verb,
object, verb, subject.
It's a not very complicated structure. So if you learn one, you know all of them, and all the elements are just exchangeable. So if you learn the very little structure of these 5 or 7 different structures that you have, from then on it's only vocabulary. Now vocabulary is something you take incrementally. My suggestion would be to learn the vocabulary that's interesting to you, because that's the only thing you'll ever learn.
It's true.
It's definitely
it's true for me, regardless of what the subject is.
I found it to be true for everyone, because nobody cares if the cat's under the table. If you're into motorcycles, you want to understand that
exactly.
And you will have a lot more fun reading, like you did when you were a kid. It's a perfect example. Is that you were interested in science. It didn't matter that you don't understand the vocabulary. You will learn that.
You'll learn that.
Because you're looking for the meaning of it, and it will make sense. And it will stick very soon. If you had to learn, I don't know, all the vocabulary of I don't know.
No, vocabulary is a matter of
it's a matter of
perseverance and time. Like over time, you will gain vocabulary. What you need to know, the basics, is the structures.
I don't think you gain vocabulary over time unless you actually force yourself.
Unless you want to.
Yeah, you have to go for it. And that's what most people don't understand. It's, I decided to learn the French language when I was 21. I haven't stopped since. Every single day there's something.
Yeah.
Just one. Now, because I'm lazy. Yes. English is also. There's not a day go by that I'm not looking up a word that I don't understand, or there's something new in it, and over time it piles up. It's not that complicated. It takes time, but the very basics of it is not that complicated. French is a bit more complicated to write than English, especially at the very beginning, because you don't understand really.
I think aside from the simplest things that you said were exactly accurate, is that you have only several types of communications: interrogation, proposal.
It's a simplistic approach to it. But at the beginning,
but right above that layer of simplicity is the layer of a much more complex thing, which is tenses and prepositions and genders, which are equally basic to all languages.
How many tenses do you use in English?
There's 4 and 3 subtype each.
You use them all.
Past, present, future, and there's past perfect, present perfect, stuff like that. So there's like 3 subcategories of each, and we generally use them all. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you really think about the conditional is inform. If you understand the logic behind what it wants to say, the form of it is nothing else than another structure with an auxiliary verb that you are.
But this you're right about. You do use them all only if you want to. You don't need to use them all.
Kids don't speak like that. No.
You don't need to sound like Barack Obama all the time. So of course you can get away without learning all the tenses. It's
well, for a while.
I mean, feasible. For a while, definitely.
It's just a way to avoid getting overwhelmed, because there's a lot to learn, and if you I think English is a fairly easy language to start with. So you, with fairly little knowledge, you can go far fairly correctly. With I don't know, 500 word vocabulary, you can already say sentences that are correct. That's not going to happen in French.
Yeah, probably not.
It's way more complicated than that, even at the basic level. But it's not that complicated that an 8, if a 10-month-old kid is not speaking in French, you would think he's kind of slow. Which means that if by the 10th month you're not doing it, then you're not doing something right.
Yeah.
You don't have to be complicated with it, but with French what helped me a lot is that it's predicated on the same basic principle as the English language, especially in tenses. Like I could have been, form is exactly, literally, word from word, translated to French.
Okay.
Actually with the same auxiliary verb, with the same conjugation, with the same structure of it all. Once you understand this, it's like, So, it's not that complicated. And a lot, as far as I can understand Spanish and Italian and Portuguese and other languages, is the everyday words that are different, because they distort.
Yeah.
Because they have been getting through a distortion of time and space. But the complicated words, like scientific words, they don't use that often.
They're ancient.
Yeah, it's just pronounced differently in English. Like, let's say...
the relics of a more sophisticated usage only.
Okay, like to disappear, à disparaître, or I don't know.
You'd find a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Etymologically speaking, you can easily trace this down.
They have the same source.
But if you go to, you're exactly right. If you go to more commonly used words, it'll be much harder. There'll be more like discrete breaks in it.
To do in French is like affaire. Doesn't look like it at all.
To do with,
but when it comes to, I don't know, civilization or civilisation, there's not that much of a difference.
Exactly.
So yeah, you learn how to pronounce what you read. That helps a lot in French.
Yeah.
After that, it's just.
Yeah.
I would say the same thing that I would say with music is that you go way farther if you put your mind to it 3 minutes a day than if you spend, I don't know, 45 minutes with it, but only once a week.
Yeah, I think I should just do it more regularly than
regularly helps,
thinking
and
of-
you are surrounded by it. You can
Yeah.
you can pretty much help it, really. So
Yeah.
that's
I'll
what
get.
I do.
I plan to get to it. This is something.
It's
that
not
I'm
it's not
gonna
very
do.
difficult. Search somebody and
Yeah.
voluntarily expose yourself to the feeling of regression that you feel when you don't know how to express something, and you know it's there, and you know that's the worst, but
Yeah,
you're gonna get through.
communication. I have to. I want to. I don't have to, but I want to do this. And I will do this. It's just a matter of time. So anyway, coming back to the question we started with about India,
Yes. Oh yeah.
which is somehow we left it so far behind. But
Talk about India some more, please. Come on.
complex.
Complex
But
India.
that's a lot. I'm not going to finish that.
Well, don't.
Anyway, let's try. Yeah. So
You're not gonna vomit on my back when we ride back. I
I
hope.
vomit free since '93. That's something I made up.
Since '93, you were fucking born.
No, I was born when
Oh
I
yeah.
did.
Well, yeah, but
Pretty sure I was still vomiting as a 4-year-old kid. So.
that's called barfing right now.
Yeah,
Burping.
barfing.
All right. So, what about India?
Yeah.
What about this fucking?
So I come from a very small town. This is where we started. But the life in the city, India is not something you can categorize into one type of a place, because
Well, if you're intelligent, I mean, it's too big.
yeah. No, the thing is, even most of the countries in Europe are quite small and quite more scarce when it comes to population.
Compared to India, yes, but I wouldn't say they are.
I am
small.
comparing it to India. They're really small, yeah. Some of the countries here are smaller than states in India, so they're really small, according to me. But because of this smallness of the countries here,
You're gonna get torn to pieces on the internet for this.
this is just true, guys. You can fit like 10 Italys in India at least. Okay, so just chill on that.
And so, have they ever produced a Vespa or a
Vespa?
Valentino Rossi?
No.
Exactly. So you can't.
And I'm getting to that point because the diversity, the diversity between how good and how bad is just as much. So you can't. There's no consistency in anything. You know, you can't be consistently anything in that country. You can't be consistently smart. You can't be. There's no predicting. It's far too. It's like a toss of a coin. It's like a demographic nightmare. But
Okay, I'm trying to make sense of this. Go on.
no. So what I was getting to is that because of how large it is and how diverse the population is, it's like the country itself is at odds at its own people many times, or its own places many times. We have the worst thing that happened when India was formed is that a decision was made to form states based on languages. So each state was put together, like the boundaries were drawn based on, oh, the people here speak this language, so
I
that
think
will be this
that's
state.
pretty much what happened here. Also, just
I think it's terrible. For
there's no other way to manage them.
I'm not saying that I would have done it better back then. I'm just saying now it's terrible. We can only judge it based on what's happening now. And now it's at a state where many of the states are fighting against each other in the sense, oh, you come from that state, you're not from here. You should be more like us, or if you're not like us, we will hit you or assault you or not give you jobs and stuff like that.
And
Within the same country, mind you.
You didn't have the same feeling here?
Not at all, actually.
I do.
I didn't really get that.
Well, maybe not to the extent where you experience it, sure. But you know,
Yeah, for me, it's all French.
That's what the whole parliament is all about. It's like German people say that you should do industry like we do.
But that's a different country.
And
The European Union is entirely artificial. It's not one country. These are several different countries.
It started as one.
I can completely imagine different countries being against each other in the last 20 years or so.
But that's exactly what's happening in India as you described it. It's just in child's shoes. It's at the beginning of it. this had happened several hundred years ago in Europe, but it's still the same process. It's that people started to propagate everywhere, and so much time has passed between, I don't know, tribes or groups of people that they started speaking differently, and that became a different language.
Yeah, and that's
why you can retrace certain expressions to their sources.
No, I understand why the languages here and the countries here formed based on the uniformity of languages, but the problems that probably Europeans faced because of these differences in like 50 years ago are the problems that we are facing as a single country now.
But in that regard, you know, single country is again just an arbitrary limit.
Exactly.
As like saying Europe is, it's arbitrary and it's artificial.
Yeah, but when it comes to productivity and economics and
now that I agree with, and also, well, yeah,
the consequences of these things
of basis,
impinge upon. The economy of the country impinges upon the consequences of things like these, which are basically dividing the country.
It is divided here also, exactly for the same reason.
Somehow the European Union should get along.
It hasn't been that long, and we just had a world war not that far away.
50 years ago. 60 years ago.
Yeah, that's not that long.
I mean,
how long has it been that these societies here are predicated on the same idea? What, 200 years? 250? Before that, there was nothing. It's just, you guys are 100 years behind. That's it. That's not a lot of time. It's exactly the same thing that happened here. I think. No,
it's true. I always give credit where credit is due, is that the country has made, like India has made, for the short amount of time that it has existed as a arbitrarily defined country, it has made an astounding amount of progress. This is beyond doubt.
Absolutely.
By many standards.
Well,
India has made progress in fields that were quite unexpected, like space technology, but also other fields like economically speaking, we were not that bad 10 years ago. Agriculturally speaking, we're doing quite well. It's not at all entirely terrible, but the problems that are quite systemic in India are because of these issues, which is that we are quite diverse within the same country to a degree that it is becoming an issue, which is, I'm not saying get rid of diversity. In fact, I'm saying people should become more tolerant to diversity, but the opposite is happening. It's going the other direction. People are suddenly starting to realize, oh, look at how diverse we are. Let's hate each other. I don't know why that's happening now. For a place we have been this diverse for the last 70 years, but suddenly it's an issue. Did
population rise in India recently? I mean, the last 100 years?
Well, yeah, of course.
That's why. Because there's less space. So it's harder to tolerate somebody else's difference when they are so close to you. That's exactly what's happening in Europe. I mean, as far as I can tell, with the very little political knowledge I have, it's exactly the same thing. It's easier for the right side to say that it's the fault of those people who look like this or have a distinctive feature of any kind.
Once your space is threatened.
But it's a space problem.
Well, that's very likely to be the cause of the
you can see it in the big cities. It's not because Parisian people are genetically more nervous or volatile or idiotic. That has nothing to do with it. Socially, they don't have the amount of personal space we have here. That's it. Have you seen Rick and Morty? Personal space, the personal space show. It is so very important. 1, personal space. 2, personal space. See, I'll show it to you. It's
no, but that does make a lot of sense, because in the last 10 or 20 years, the population has expanded at a much higher rate than ever before. For reasons that are obvious. We have better healthcare now.
For example,
people live longer. We have better agriculture. People eat better. So yeah, there's more people in general. There's also less jobs because of automation. So it's threatening not just personal space, but also job prospects. So I know these reasons exist, but at the same time, it's put the country at a situation where it's like pitching 10% of the country or 20% of the country against the 80%. The 80% being the majority of rural India, that it's as if it never changed. The 20% of the country is the one that is comparable to many cities in the US. And that's the bridge that I was talking about. So when I traversed from being grown up in a small town and being educated in a city, this was the most obvious thing about Indian. This is where I learned the most about India and its class system and its and all the things that come along with calling the country as a diverse and complicated system. Because I've seen what it's like in the small village and I've seen what it's like in the city. What's in the city is economic classes, the most obvious thing. We have very few people having too much of the money, and we probably have the largest middle class in any. I don't know the statistics, so I shouldn't say solidly that is true.
Check it out, but
we should probably check it out. But given by just how many people we have a large number of middle class. And then there's the ones who are absolutely lower middle class or homeless or that. So in cities, this is the difference that you see most obviously. This economic class system where you have the high class, which is just like 2% of the population, but they hold most of the value. Then you have like a large number of middle class, and then just people you would see on the streets or wouldn't really consider as a workforce. When you go to the villages, it's all about the caste, the religion, stuff like that. So it becomes about social class. And I'm not saying that cities are immune to social class. They still have,
definitely not. It's
but it's just what you see most obviously. In the villages you go, it's not so much about economic class. It's more about social class. Oh, you're a Brahmin or you're a...
I don't think it's that very different from anything that I've perceived here. It seems to be like it's pretty much the same thing.
Perhaps. I have not seen much of here, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think so, to be honest. It sounds like it, because on the countryside, I think tradition is more important than in the cities, partially because in the cities, to be able to live, you have to have a higher income, which inherently means that there's a higher amount of people who were able to afford an education after a generation or two, which inherently means that they are less prone to those traditions that they see no sense in. That's pretty much how I would simplify. It is a simplification, but
no, but yeah,
it sounds like it.
Simplistically speaking, even I think tradition is a big problem in the rural part of it. It's like, I never been a big fan of tradition because just generally being a rebellious person, but there
are some traditions that are worthwhile to keep, even though it hasn't changed but they shouldn't be kept without being constantly in check.
Exactly.
I agree with that.
Effectively, a tradition is something that has been there for a long time, and
sometimes for a reason.
Yeah, I'm not saying I can completely disagree with that at all. But many of the traditions in India, some of them are completely harmless. So you're like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Some of them make sense, like seasonal traditions, for example. Makes sense.
A friend in common has taught me once that how many generation in mice do you need in order to lose an instinct that is not used in lab mice?
How many generations it takes? I wouldn't know the exact number.
Yeah,
but I imagine
I haven't been told either how many, but I've been told that they have run experiments. I think this was before we met you. After, I don't want to say anything stupid, but 15 generation easy. Like
it'd probably be a long.
Yeah, like they scared the mice so much that it changes their epigenetics, and it generation after generation to remember the smell of being something threatening. 15 generation wasn't enough to put it out, so that's tradition.
Yeah,
it's in place for a reason. It's insanely difficult to get rid of.
Yeah,
especially in the rural parts of town where you're not looking. Generally speaking, so far the tendency was that we were not looking consciously to improve on our situation with education as a primary tool. So yeah,
it's quite resilient for sure.
Of course, and you have a lot of that, just as I do.
Yeah,
language is nothing else but tradition. That's why it makes no sense. None of it. It's the stupidest thing ever.
It's literally word of mouth.
Exactly. Exactly. Couldn't be more if we tried. So.
It's true. So that influences a lot of things that happen.
You know what French languages do. I mean, this I'm gonna get blasted for this on the online. It's the it's the Roman imperials coming to this area of Europe, trying to spread the language of these people, learning it shittily. That's it. That's why they are writing it nonsensically.
Oh, they're gonna love this.
Oh, they're gonna. Well, it is in a way, because why do you need 5 different vowels to express one? Well, makes zero sense. Not like Hungarian makes sense, because it doesn't.
No,
it's also stupid.
Most of them don't.
and the French language is beautiful. I'm giving it that, and I love it to death. And it's a language I can express myself in. But let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes no sense. Because it never did. So,
yeah.
All right, sorry.
No, criticizing something that you love is the best thing you can do for it, in my opinion, which is why I criticize my country as freely as I praise it for when it gets it right.
Well, you know...
but I get so much hate for it.
I was around 12 when I criticized English, when I started learning it. And my grandfather was like, it's good that you know it. Nobody cares. Yeah. This is how we speak it. It's not about you criticizing it. It's whether you can actually adapt yourself to learning it, whether it makes sense or not, because it doesn't have to make sense.
Yeah, but that's the thing. This is something even I've heard over time, is that English, this is the way English is. You just gotta learn it. There's no other way. And English is a tradition, just like all languages are, and all traditions.
So much so that there's a couple of different branches.
Yes. And all traditions have a similar retort to you when you try to change them. Is that this is the way it is. You don't need to. No one cares what you think. I'll get to the point. Yeah. So this is a trend that I've noticed, and when you mentioned that your grandfather said this, it kind of sparked this idea in my head. Is that I once saw a video about people who have traditionally been making dictionaries, maintaining dictionaries and updating dictionaries. The lady said something that really it still stays with me. Is that people like to think that the dictionary is a record that tells them how to use words, but it's not. It's a record of how people are using words, which means traditions should be like that, is that it shouldn't reflect what has always been. It should reflect what it is now. You should update them like dictionaries are. We don't treat social traditions the way we treat language as a tradition. Language as a tradition is extremely fluid. For example, the words, several words didn't exist 10 or 20 years ago that exist now.
Yeah. And
the dictionaries reflect that, which people look to as an authority on the language. For traditions, for social traditions, there is no such updating happening, which is the problem. And same is my problem with traditions like religion, for example, is that there is no updates in them. My problem has never been that they began as something bad or forget it. Whoever came up with it had whatever intentions he or she or they had. But if you update it, it's okay. You can make it better. No, if you don't update it, then you're in trouble.
I agree with you, but I think I agree. I understand why it cannot be updated that fast. Partially, I agree with you completely that the church, for over several hundred years, has I don't know how should I say this, has
abused its power.
No, well, yeah, sure, but well, they also did a couple of good things that we often forget. But
no, yeah,
they didn't allow us. They tried to preserve a system that became abusive as a consequence. Sure, but think about it this way. You know teachers from your let's say from high school. That's not a very well, I can't speak for India,
No,
especially not for your high school. Where I come from, this is not currently the highest. I went to a shitty school, so this wasn't the highest career choice a person could make academically. And what do you do with teachers there when something like the internet shows up? What do you do with people? Because okay, history teachers every single year, well, if you think about it, they should just update the book with the past year that happened, and move forward. What do you do when everything that you have been teaching is becoming completely useless? Do you fire that person in there? And that's the problem with the social network that we are living currently.
Yeah, but that's the thing, and this is where and I've had this kind of discussion before, is that the internet is a great tool and all that, sure, but it's a very personal thing, and we undermine how personal it is. Because think of Google, the easiest way to the internet. Google will only tell you what you already know you're asking.
How could you ask a question that you don't know how to ask?
But a teacher will tell you what's on the curriculum, regardless of whether you're asking it or not.
But the problem is that...
and that's why we need teachers.
And I agree with you. And that's, in my idea, also what a teacher is. But the majority of the cases that I encountered wasn't that.
Yeah. Shitty teachers are not a good example to go by.
Well, yeah, but they are also part of society, and
they are,
you want to kill them all, or
no.
Should we dispose? The problem is that they have a lifespan. You guys are actually pretty successful, apparently, working on lengthening that lifespan and making it as efficient as possible. I have seen people who have been teaching stuff that I had classes to learn how to draw letters properly on mechanical drawings. Makes zero sense today. Not only because we had plastic forming things that cut out that letter, so you would take a pencil and you draw it, and it draws exactly the same formula. Because we have a fucking printer.
Yeah.
But back then, when they started it in the 50s, it didn't exist. And so, what do you do with somebody who starts teaching?
Jobs are going to change, and these people should change their occupation accordingly. The thing is...
I do agree. How?
People are not going to agree with that much.
Well, first of all...
The person who has the job is not going to agree with that sentiment.
And how do you... what do you expect them to move towards you?
That's the thing. I mean, given how liberal I am, this makes sense to me the most, but it may not make sense to everyone, is that there is always more jobs coming in the way we want to move ahead. And what we have to do is find better ways to train people, not better ways to get rid of them or replace them or shuffle them. We have to have a better system to train someone to a degree that they can be part of the labor force. For example, the changes in the global environment and all these, and all the jobs required to resurrect it and recover from it, these are all going to be new jobs that will require low degree labor as well as high degree thinking and intellectual people and all that. It's going to require a whole section of like all the layers of a workforce. All the people who used to teach things that are now entirely useless, or used to be coal miners, which is entirely useless, or used to be whatever, can move to these jobs. And the only thing stopping them is like what should be a 6-month diploma. But in most countries...
And the will to go there.
And the will to go there. So this is the two things stopping this. One is the will to go there in the people, because change is scary for most people. And the other thing is the governments who would not invest in such training programs.
There's one other parameter that you're not taking into account, which possibly I think is way more important. Age. There's no way you are going to teach anybody after 40 unless they really want to. If they hadn't been trained all their life, or
I think anyone beyond the age of 40 should have a universal basic income.
Well, that's, yeah.
Because at that point, if you have to change your job, which every 10 years is going to happen, every 5 years or every 2 years even in the future. But every now and then it's going to happen. At the age of 40, no. You should have a basic
50 years ago,
income.
this wasn't the case, and the majority of the problems we have is with a generation that weren't trained, weren't prepared. They were prepared for a stable world that does not exist anymore.
Yeah, it does not exist anymore.
And
I feel bad for them, but at the same
that's
time,
not gonna help them.
Exactly. My thoughts and prayers are not going to do jack shit for them.
That's definitely sure.
So the world is going to move along regardless of how much sympathy they get or regardless of how bad they feel. The best way to move ahead is to either find the ones that are willing and get them trained. The ones that are not willing should be provided a basic income. But the world was not in a position where it could afford basic income 50 years ago. It was not.
Well, I don't think it is today.
Today it's much closer to that.
It's closer, but I don't think. I think France is the only country where you genuinely actually have that.
Yeah, France does, and France is not the biggest economy in Europe. Or in the whole world.
But by far the second one, though.
Or in the whole world. So it's
they
like
are big,
other countries can do this, is what I'm saying.
Nah.
Other countries can do this. It's about the support that they get from their governments. Is what my belief is. But again, I use the word belief very carefully.
I should do more research on that. I believe France. I don't believe it's gonna be sustainable in France even. In the next 10 years, I don't think it's going to exist as far as things go currently. But this is something that we should talk about this with an expert, because details elude me, and everything is in the details concerning that. I don't see economy.
That's true. Well, ideologically, this all might make sense, but practically, even I don't know how much it makes sense.
We have a problem with the video, and it bugs me. If you look at it, yours is like.
Oh, there's a lag.
It lags. So here's the thing. The other one was almost 2 hours. This is 1 hour.
Okay, I think
15
we should
minutes.
clock
I think
it in.
we're gonna close this up.
Yeah, clock it in. Yeah, I think it's.
How are you? We'll talk about
I'm
continuing
good.
this next week if you're interested, because I am.
Sure.
This would be fun. This would be fun to do.
Maybe
with Arthur.
I'm a local, so I can participate as often as you need me.
Do you think we could invite? Well, not next week, but eventually a certain Greek colleague of yours. I would love to have some kind of a similar conversation, because she will have a very different viewpoint.
Yeah.
On economy.
For sure, she'll have a different perspective. Why? I mean, I can ask her, or you can ask her.
I already did, and she didn't say. She didn't say much to it.
Okay.
Well, I don't want it to be a problem, but if it's not, then I would really love to have her. Yeah, handle it, please.
Yeah.
I would really appreciate it.
But that would be. I think that would be interesting. But yeah, I mean, we can do this again at some point. Make it a several part discussion. But as always,
well,
this discussion has been as whole as every discussion is.
I'm going to do the same thing to it as what I saw on Rogan's podcast. I'm going to chop it up to subjects also and upload separate videos from it.
Makes sense.
So yeah, sure.
Correct. So how do you usually close it? By a fist bump or something? Because if you don't,
no, that's PewDiePie. I think
I suggest you should.
No, that's already been done in the gamer community. I'll just say, well, thank you, thank you for the honest conversation, for the attention, for I don't know, for coming, taking the time.
Of course.
Listening to the bullshit I had about women and languages and all this shit.
That was the only thing that I struggled with the most, because
we didn't yet talk about MotoGP and everything, and that you would struggle with that too.
I would be extremely clueless about it.
We should change that.
Yeah.
I actually introduced
several people.
Arthur to it, and well, he rides a motorcycle. He has been riding for more than 10 years, so he knows what it's about. But we are going to watch it on Sunday. It's gonna be at night. The Argentina race is the second one. If you want to join, then you're more than welcome. We're gonna do a podcast afterwards. Actually,
I look for the podcast, because Sunday I think me and Anna are going to go biking. A bike trip.
I don't understand how come that your girlfriend is more important than my podcast. I mean,
I know it's difficult to grasp, Matt, but that's just how things are.
Well, thank you anyway. God.
You're welcome, and thank you for this. This was actually as interesting as I expected it to be.
Well, that's That's a nice compliment.
Yeah, I mean, I've told people that I'm doing this podcast, and to all of them, I say the same things, that all conversations are interesting with this guy, so I don't see how this podcast could be.
Thank you so much. That's I wish it to be the case, because that's exactly why I started this. Because I don't know what to teach people, but I know how to extract.
That's true.
From
this is
people
good.
like you. So
well, cheers.
Yeah,
then.
cheers, and welcome to France, like I always say.
Thank you. All right.
All right, people. Bye.
Bye bye.